Welcome, everybody, to Crunch Time with Jeff, Booner, Lukas, and Gentry. Lukas will be joining us in a second here. Same with Gentry. But today we got a lot to talk about. Lions Minicamp continues. Dan Campbell met with the media. NBA Finals start today. Alim McNeill spoke to the media as well. A lot of stuff to get to today, Booner. Get your merchandise, officialctsports.com. Everything's live, and things are being developed as we speak. Can't wait to release it to the people so you guys can order it. But Boone, how we doing tonight? You just put out your a bet. You're back.
I'm back. Booner Bets is back. I haven't put a bet out probably since either March Madness or football. It's been a little bit. I feel great today, by the way. I want to throw that out there. It's a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day outside. Beautiful drive home. Everything was beautiful about today. But the bet's back. If you guys want to go, I don't even know if we can pull up we can pull the tweet up. I have a bet tonight. Booner's Bets is finally back. It's been a while. It's been like I've been in hibernation. There's been really nothing exciting for me to bet and to go and be like, I want to put my money out on this and give the people some money and help make the people money. I did it today. I figured the NBA Finals, everyone's going to be watching it. Luka Doncic, Kyrie, Boston Celtics, Lukas Klotz. Everyone is going to be involved with this bet. Big day. Last year, you guys remember last year, my legendary run with Jimmy Butler and then Jokic. Obviously,
that is true.
Yeah, the 50 Nuggets. So I figured it was a good time to bring back Booner Bets heading into football season. The basketball is going to be over soon, and then ramp it up. It's like a little practice here for football.
Shaking off the rust, Boone.
And the bet
OTAs. It's
OTAs. I'll give you guys the bet here real quick because the game's actually at 8:30. I thought it was at 8, so I should rush to get the bet out. So we got 30 minutes. If anyone wants to put it in, it's a simple parlay. Not a big one, not a small. It's plus 100. Just double your money. It's Luka Doncic, a double-double.
Yeah.
And Jaylen Brown over 20.5 points.
That's all you got, Boone?
That's it. Plus 100. It's a.
I would have. What was Kyrie's point total like over under?
20 something. It was like 20 something. I didn't even want to touch that, to be honest. I know, like, the thing is like, I know Jaylen Brown had 11 points in his last game. That was like an automatic win. Jaylen Brown is the guy, at least to me, he's more consistent than Jason Tatum. I trust Jaylen Brown to go get 20 points over Jason Tatum. Maybe that's just crazy. Kyrie too, but Kyrie's up and down a little bit as well. Like throughout the playoffs, he's had a couple like 15-point games, a couple 19-point games. Jaylen Brown's been very consistent.
Because you guys know more than me, so correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't Kyrie kind of been like letting Luka cook in the first, second, and third, and then he really turns up in the fourth? And Luka still does his thing, but Kyrie kind of
opposite a little. I think Lukas
really?
goes off. Okay. Luka, yeah, Kyrie's like a third quarter guy, and Luka in the fourth. So, but like they both have been just going absolutely nuts. 30 points.
Yeah, they kind of been rotating. There was a game against the Timberwolves where Kyrie had like 20 in the first half, and then Luka showed up. Yeah. So that's probably what you're thinking. They kind of so it makes them dangerous. And Jaylen Brown, that matchup, the Mavericks got some forwards to throw at him, but Jaylen Brown, I would agree with that, Boone. Over 20.
Yeah. You know what? Do you remember? I think was it the finals a year or two ago to where game 1, I think he had like 25 points in like the first quarter or first half or something. I don't know. That goes back in my head all the time. And I feel like Jaylen Brown. So Luka Doncic double and the Jaylen Brown over 20.5 plus 100. That's it. Super easy. Double. It's basically double your money. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. Don't come at me if it loses and you end up losing money, but I think it's a lock.
You think it's better odds? Better odds than my Matthew Betts bet?
It is indeed.
Okay.
Indeed.
I would probably tend to agree with that. At this point, I would tend to agree with that.
Are you guys going to take the bet?
I'll place it, Boone. I'll place it with you.
All right. Send you guys the link. So
yeah, plus 100. I mean, for those two, Luka's going to get a double-double. Even though Celtics defensively, they're good, really good actually, but I can see that.
This is the first bet I've given out in like 6 months, and you guys know when I give a bet out, that thing hits. You guys know Booner Bets. We're locked in.
Well, you know who? No, go on. No, go on.
So just real quick, because I'm trying to get a better understanding for these finals, so I can be more locked in. For the Celtics to win, because I'm pretty sure we're all rooting for the Mavs here. Who needs to step up outside of JB and Jason Tatum? I'm assuming Drew Holiday has to go lock down on defense with Luka or Kyrie.
Porzingis is going to have to show up. He hasn't played in a couple months. He's going to have to show up.
Yeah, I think the biggest X factor to me is probably Drew Holiday because he's going to be chasing Kyrie around, and Drew Holiday is one of the best defenders as a guard. He's one of the best defensive guards in the league. So I think defensively, he's probably their X factor because given his assignment. But to Booner's point, Porzingis as a player, like, dude, when he's in the lineup, that's what them being the best regular season team was with Porzingis. So he takes them to another level.
I'm gonna say this too, real quick. I think this series comes down, and this is why I think the Mavs win. Is I do like the Mavs role players a lot, like Tim Hart, like those guys have been playing very well. PJ Washington, Tim Hardaway, Derek Lively, like those guys have been playing very well. I think it might come down to like, yeah, your stars. You hope like whoever plays consistent, the stars play more consistent. But like these role players, I think like you look at like Derek White, Al Horford, like
Derek White, baby.
There are some dudes, Peyton Pritchard, like there are some dudes there. Hey, what role players are going to step up on whose team? I think that's who ends up winning the NBA Finals is whatever role players end up really like stepping up and making a difference.
Derek White comes alive in big games.
Derek White I would love Derek White on my team. He is like the ultimate role player. He's great. And he's another defensive. He's also really good defensively. PJ Washington, I think, is another guy on the Mavericks that would be probably defensively an X factor because he's going to be matched up with Tatum. He's probably going to be him and Tatum are going to be going at it. And he's been their best wing defensively. So he's another guy. But yeah, this final is going to be great. I mean, I have the Mavs in 6. I had them in the Western Conference Finals at the beginning, but I had them facing the Nuggets, and I had the Nuggets beating the Mavericks. But since the Timberwolves made it, I changed my pick, and we'll see. You agree 6, Boone? Is that
right? As soon as the Mavs won, like that night, I tweeted out, I said Mavs in 6. I think they win it in 6. I think honestly too, I really hope this NBA Finals is set up to be probably, at least for me, the most exciting NBA Finals since like 2016. That Warriors Cavs final, we haven't really had like an electric NBA Finals. It feels like in like 4, 5, 6 years. So I feel like this is finally like we're getting there's some hype to this. So I'm excited.
Yeah, it seems if you guys been paying attention to just social media in general, on Twitter, the Lions been putting out some videos, and this is what got me fired up. Besides the finals tonight, this got me fired up. Jamison Williams over the top.
In the bread basket. In the bread basket.
In the bread basket. It was a great throw by Jared Goff. This is the stuff. And again, it's minicamp, but this will translate right here. Look at it. And beautiful throw by Goff, by the way. Look at this. And right here. Look, ooh. I mean, this is the big thing with Jamo that I think if this is part of his game now, look at on the sideline, right in the bread basket.
Carlton Davis.
Tracking the ball beautifully. That's what's going to help Jamo get to the next level. And if he just has to do this consistently, and obviously Goff, I mean, you're throwing that.
What a pass.
Ball. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard not to catch it. But that, I don't know. I'm excited. He's probably the player I'm most excited for because I just want to see. I want to see it in all areas, not just shots like this, but that dude, he can play. I'm sorry. And I know statistically people will always argue the first round pick and what he's came up with statistic wise through his first couple of years. But there's so much context. Like, you know him as a player. This guy is absolutely electric. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think for me, he's the player I'm most excited to watch next year is by far Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not going to deny that. But the player that I'd be most happy to watch have success on this team is by far Jamison Williams, offense or defense, just because all the noise. And even when he is having success, still there's going to be the critics that say, oh, well, he's a first-round pick, so he's still a bust in my eyes. And you can have that narrative. That's fine. But with Jamison Williams, the talent is there. It's just now with the timing, like we said 1,000 times. But when you have connections like this, I get it 7-on-7 at OTAs, but that's still building a chemistry that he's not been able to do in the past with Goff.
And just the one thing too, the question with Jamison Williams and Goff was like, hey, will Goff be able to connect with him with these deep routes? Like is he always going to underthrow him? Like, does he have the arm for it? I think that narrative, and I don't know where you guys stand on it. I think it's like, okay, we could kind of move on from that a little bit because, I mean, Jeff, you and I have talked about this multiple times when it comes to DJ Chark. Was Jared Goff was making those throws to DJ Chark and putting him in positions to be successful. Now you're going to do that for Jamison Williams. So when I do hear those comments like, oh, Jamo's going to be limited because Jared Goff can't get the ball deep to him. Like, you just saw him put in a bread basket 50 yards downfield there. like a perfect throw right where he needed it to be, right over top Carlton Davis in the only spot that Jameson Williams can catch it. And like you've seen that with DJ Chark, you've seen that with Josh Reynolds, you've seen him do that with different players. So I think this connection here, it's going to be a lot scarier than I feel like people do think. I'm excited to see what happens with this. I don't know. Obviously, the production, we talk all the time about, hey, where are you going to get the yards and like, where is that going to go? I think you see a big season out of Jameson Williams. I don't want this video or mini camp to sit here and persuade people. I'm just excited to see now that you're starting to see them get reps together and kind of get a feel for each other and figure this thing out and get just, put back to back practices at a high level together. That's when you start building that relationship. That's why Josh Reynolds was so good with Jared Goff. Khalif Raymond's so good with him. Amon-Ra is they've got so many reps together. He trusts him. You're starting to see that with Jamo now. And it's like when that connection is hitting at all cylinders, you guys already know how I feel about Jameson Williams' ceiling. I think it's one of the highest, if not the highest, with Jahmyr Gibbs on this team. So if this thing hits on all cylinders, him and Amon-Ra St. Brown might be one of the best duels in the NFL, potentially.
Yeah, but look who he caught it on. Don't let that go over your head. 2-3. Who's that? Carlton Davis. All right, and Carlton Davis, really good corner. Yeah. So I know it's 7-on-7. So but that is a 1-on-1 matchup. All right, and I know that no pass rush. No, that's not fun. We're not doing that. All right, Goff is a beautiful pass, beautiful catch by Jamo. Because again, he doesn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown's hands, but again, it's unfair. I mean, it's fortunate you have a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but sometimes it's unfortunate because you're going to compare everybody to Amon-Ra St. Brown's hands. So that's just how, and not everyone can do it. Obviously, what Amon-Ra's done his first 3 seasons is historically great, which we'll probably bring up at some point. I mean, honestly, we could bring it up now, what Adam tweeted out, because it's when I saw the stats, or actually we'll get to it tomorrow because we can make a whole segment out of it, depending on how today's show go. Maybe I'll bring it up, but he is on a historical pace. So I don't want that to. Amon-Ra is a hell of a player, but for Jamo, I think a successful year. We talk about it all the time. Statistically, he's not going to be putting up 1,200 yards, 1,100 yards, 1,300 yards. But if he puts up 800, he's a number 2 wide receiver. I'm cool with that. Knowing how good of a tight end you have. You have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown in Philly, but they don't have a Sam Laporta who's going to he's a damn near 1,000-yard tight end. So, it's going to be like that duo, but not to that in terms of numbers. No, because you have Sam Laporta, which is a great thing to have, by the way, 1,000-yard tight end.
Do you guys ever think that people, because I know we hold this against some players, not even just on the lines, but do you ever think there will be a day when people forget about draft stock or where somebody was drafted when it's 3 years past? Because it's just one of those things where it's almost like, I know it's different, but it's almost like the combine where it's like, all right, you saw it, move on. He was drafted, pick 12. Move on. If he's still being a productive player for you for half a decade, that is fine. Like, I understand, like, if he was a Philip Dorsett, if he was a John Ross, if he was a guy that was taken in the first round and fell on his face, that is a bust. But for a guy that's on a productive offense where there's a lot of mouths to feed, and it sucks because Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th-round wide receiver, and if you were to do a redraft, he'd probably be a top 10 pick. So you have another first-round caliber wide receiver right next to him. So do you guys ever think there will be a day where people just drop it?
Honestly, it should be more, and I get you do want to bring that up, the relevancy when it comes to the draft stock and how much is how much production are you getting out of it, but at the end of the day, it's like, Klotz, to your point, you're 3 years down the line, man. It's the expectations change for everyone. Like you know what I mean? Like if you pay a guy a ton of money and when he's younger and at the end of his contract, he's older and he's hurt, you're going to sit there and you're like, all right, we got what we could out of him. And it's like the same thing, but opposite, in my opinion, with the draft. It's you drafted him high. Okay, maybe right now you're not getting 1st round value out of him. But if you can get something out of him and you change your expectations with it and your mindset with it, like what can he become a wide receiver 2, a high level wide receiver 2 for us? Yeah, like that's perfect. Like, okay, yeah, it sucks we might have got that at the 12th overall pick, but you know how hard it is to hit on picks in any league. Like in any league that is. Like you draft guys in the top 5. We talk about quarterbacks all the time. You draft the quarterback number 1 overall, and he ends up being a miss more often than being a hit. So like you have to put that in perspective. And at least how I look at it, to where if Jamo gives you that wide receiver 2 numbers for the next 2 or 3 years during Super Bowl runs, that was worth. Obviously, you might have wanted a different pick at number 12, but it ends up being worth it because he's contributed in a different, his role changed. Like everyone's role isn't always what it's supposed to be when you come into a team. It does change. It evolves, whether it's good or bad. That's just the way that's the sports.
I think context is super important. Context is super important. And I do think that Jamo's draft position would be talked about more if the Lions didn't draft Amon-Ra St. Brown, because you have an all-pro wide receiver. Now everyone's like, well, what can we get out of Jamo? But if you didn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think he'd be a pressure cooker. Like it'd be more like waiting, what's going on? Yeah. We expect big things. So I think having Amon-Ra St. Brown helps him. But to your point, Lucas, once you're in the league for a certain amount of time, and it's not like you're, if you're the worst case scenario, I'll just bring up Jeff Okudah if you're like that, of course, your draft stock's always going to be brought up. But then there's players like TJ who were productive, but still, like, why a tight end? Why would you draft a tight end? So, it's a tough conversation, but I think having Amon-Ra St. Brown definitely helps. No doubt about it. Having Sam Laporta helps. The whole he's insulated with so many weapons that everyone's like, okay, if he can just give us 800 yards, fine. But man, if we didn't have Amon-Ra or Sam, and now we're looking at Jamo as like the clear number one, and you're like, okay, what's going on here? There'd probably be more frustration, but
for sure.
Yeah,
you can even look at every draft. You can look at every draft when it comes to wide receivers, though. Like every first round wide receiver isn't going to sit there and be an all pro wide receiver. I'm just looking at it now, and there's just guys like you can go back to 2020. Jalen Reagor went 21st overall in front of Justin Jefferson. That's like a look at that as a Jameson.
Have you ever seen the video of Minnesota's their front office after Philly drafts Jalen Reagor?
It's crazy.
And his draft position was brought up because at the time, who did they have in Philly?
J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
That's why. He was absolutely fried. And it's Philly too, which
and guys, there's like other wide receivers like Treylon Burks a couple years ago. We talk about him all the time. He went 18th overall, and what has he done? There's guys like that all the time. Quentin Johnston already in the Chargers, drafted 21st overall, wanting to be, the Chargers want him to take that spot. And like, what has he done? It happens every year. But like, if you get something out of these guys, like if Quentin Johnston ends up being, putting up 8 to 1,000 yards the next 3 or 4 years, they're probably happy with that pick. It's the same thing with the Lions. Like if you end up getting some sort of production within that rookie contract out of Jameson Williams, you have to be like, okay, especially drafting him off an ACL injury.
Yeah, winning solves everything too. They're winning games, so no one really cares.
It would be a problem if you're losing right now and you made that pick and you traded up for that and you're just losing games and he's not giving you anything. Okay, now we can what's going on here?
Yeah, it'd be No, that's maybe the wrong comparison. I was going to say, and I don't think this is the same thing, but it'd be like if you had Okudah and you drafted him, but then you hit on like another second round corner that was an all pro, and then you hit on another corner or a safety that was an all pro. And then it's like, all right, Jeff's like your third corner, whatever. Yet you sign a corner and you're thinking, can we just get something out of him? You still would bring up the draft stock, but I guess you'd be less focused. You'd be like, well, we hit on a second round all pro corner. So that kind of worked out, but you're still paying him number 2 overall money.
When you got Juju Hughes on the other side of him,
you
need him to be your CB1.
Yeah, that was a whole disaster. Glad we're past that. But yeah, winning solves everything. And Dan Campbell, he did mention some things that had to do with the Lions kind of progressing and taking that next step. He talked about Big Mac, Alim McNeill, not so big anymore. Slim McNeill. Now he is. And
Slim Mac.
And he also mentioned DJ Reader, an injury update, if he'll be ready by training camp. He talked about Hendon Hooker, his development, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Shout out to the doc for taking care of the fellas, bringing up the DPJ question because it's something we talk about a lot on the show. And he also brought up adding depth. So let's get to his first clip. Let's get to him on DJ Reader, Alim McNeill, and kind of he believes it. And he even mentioned that Terrell Williams absolutely loves Alim McNeill. And he believes, same with Terrell, that there is another step for him to take. So let's get to the clip. And we'll share our thoughts on it.
Do something even bigger? I do. I think we all do. Mac has got so much ability, and I think he's one of the the way that he is built and the nimbleness and athleticism and power that he has for the way that he is, for the way that he's built is just you don't see that every day. And so we still feel like there's more in there. He's really took a big step last year. We feel like there's more in there. And, You know, and I know that's one of the things Terrell noticed right when he came here. Our D-line coach was like, man, this guy, you know, he said, I've always liked Alim McNeill, but I see there's more to this guy. You know, we can get more out of him. And that's a good thing. And some of that is by, you know, fundamentals and technique and just continuing to push. And, you know, but Mac is, you know, yeah, he's one of those guys. I mean, I think this can go up another step. You know, last year was a big year for him.
Hey,
Huge.
Lee McNeill, and we always talk about what to expect in a contract year, and Dan also addressed that. He's like, if you're waiting for a contract year to go off and play your best football, then we have the wrong player. So I do understand that point too. You know, if you should be giving everything you got every single season, and that's how the Lions, all the players kind of approach it. So he is spot on there. But guys, I think Alim McNeill, we always talk about it. He is a top 10 to 13 defensive tackle in the National Football League. I think you can argue top 10 with what he can do against the run and rushing the passer, which is something that I was shocked by when he was first drafted. I always figured, okay, he's going to be someone that's really good against the run. And they also took Levi in that draft. And ironically enough, and I'll bring it up because I was wrong, I thought Levi would be a better pass rusher than Alim McNeill when they first drafted the players. Because I'm like, okay, maybe Alim's the run stopper. Levi's kind of the guy who's going to get after the court. No, he's doing both. And he's going to continue to get better. And last year, even missing the games he missed, I think if he was healthy the full season, I think he'd be damn near close to 7-8 sacks on the season. So I think next year, guys, we talked about, I think, a minimum of 7-8 sacks for Alim McNeill going into his not a contract year, but going into getting paid potentially. So I'm with Dan and Terrell.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. I mentioned a couple of days ago you saw the Justin Matabuke kind of jump from the 2 years ago to last year with the Ravens, and it feels like there's a chance, like for Dan to say, hey, we still see another step and another ceiling, like for Alim to take that step forward. And I said it all the time, dude. Like Alim last year, it felt like he was on track at one point to be a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. Just the production he was given and how dominant he was until he started getting injured, and he slowed off a little bit right before that too. So I think Alim takes a big step this year, and he mentioned as well today. He did a little press conference too with some of the beat writers. The two things that stood out to me the most from Alim is, one, they asked him about playing with DJ Reader, and I think maybe we'll get to those other comments in a minute with DJ Reader. But the one comment that stood out to me was him saying that DJ Reader, like, the fact that DJ Reader will be next to him and will be taking on double teams. And he basically said, listen, like, they're going to have to double team DJ Reader too. Because if they don't, he's going to, create just an absolute disaster in the middle there. So they're going to have to double team someone. Yes. And as soon as you double team DJ Reader, Alim McNeill, Alim said it. He's like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to dominate. So it's like, for them to be able to kind of be that 1-2 punch in the middle there, it's going to be unbelievable, first of all. And just the second thing too, like, he knows that he needs to take that jump. They asked Dan Campbell. They said, "Hey, do you think he's going to have a big year because of his contract?" He said, "I don't even care about that." He was like, "If our players are thinking about contract years and they're not playing that hard every single year in and year out, that's a problem." And Alim today got asked the same question, and he goes, "You guys, I don't know if you guys heard this, but Alim looked at the cameras and said, I don't even care it's a contract year. Haven't thought about it once. I told my agent, you work on that. Don't even tell me anything. Don't talk to me about it. Don't come to me. I don't want to know. You do whatever you have to do. Don't come to me on it unless he needs to sign a piece of paper and move on." So Alim McNeill doesn't even care about the he is just locked in, and all he cares about, and this is the interesting thing listening to mini camps now it's over, was these guys just want to win a Super Bowl. Like, sometimes you see guys like sitting out because of contracts, thinking about contracts. You see around the league, there's guys that want money and they're more worried about individual accomplishments. These guys, every interview I've seen is like Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. And when you have that mindset, that's when you make those jumps. And I think Alim McNeill, man, Jeff, I'm right there with you. A minimum of 7 sacks. I wouldn't be shocked if you see a double-digit sack season out of Alim McNeill this year. And I'll put that down. I wish I could bet on it because I would love to put some money on that. But I think you could see 10 sacks out of that man.
Yeah, I mean, Alim probably just telling his agent to handle it because he knows if he goes out there and balls that he's going to get paid regardless. And when you talk about Terrell Williams and what you were saying, Booner, with DJ Reader and Alim McNeill, he's probably just like, this is his dream situation. You went from Jeffrey Simmons to Miko Autry, who are wreaking havoc in the NFL last year, and now you get DJ Reader and Alim McNeill. And I think when he looks at Alim McNeill, and he sees the footwork that he has, the hands use that he's improved on, he's just like, this guy can be a problem. This is somebody that I can just have fun with because he knows that he can do a lot of things at the defensive tackle position that some can. Alim, he had early success in his first 2-3 years, but when he saw that he had to lose weight, he was like, oh, okay, now I can really win because he has great burst off the line of scrimmage, but now that it's going to get even better and he's going to have one-on-ones, I don't know if it's fair to hold him to the Adebuke tier just because you don't see that much. When you talk about the production, I think this guy is going to have a hell of a year, and he's going to get that money. Whether it's in Detroit, which I hope it is, or not, I think Alim McNeill is set up to get paid next offseason.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, looking at what these defensive tackles are getting paid, Alim McNeill, getting a guy who is as good as he is against the run and being equally as good or starting to be at rushing the passer, like there's a market for those guys, and they pay well. They do. Also, I wanted to mention to kind of get to the video because he did talk about him and DJ Reader and what they can be as a tandem. So let's hear. And this is from Gina Trotman, by the way. I want to give credit. This is her video, and this is Alim McNeill talking about him and DJ Reader and what they can do together. Let's check it out.
This is just like destruction to me. Honestly, like, I don't know. There's no other way I can see it. Like every time I close my eyes and visualize it, I just see destruction. Honestly, because I've been watching DJ since I was younger. You know, it's crazy I play with him now, but I've been watching DJ for a long time now, and him being from Greensboro, watching him through Clemson, and Houston, and everywhere. So it's wild, but I see destruction.
I mean, I see destruction.
Destruction.
Yeah,
that's scary.
And I mentioned it today in a video I put out on our channel. It's something that, you know, we all had conversations about what the Lions should have done, adding more edge help. I think what we need to do is stop focusing on what they don't have, which I have to do a better job of that, and focusing on what they do have, right? And they have, you know, DJ, Alim, Aiden, and a mix of guys on the other side. And we'll see some potential guys that can maybe break out a little bit, maybe Josh Pascal, Marcus Davenport, obviously James Houston. At least on the interior, they do have two guys that are going to cause some problems. And DJ Reader, Dan said that he might not be ready for training camp, which I don't think is something to be concerned about because a guy like DJ, he's a veteran. So I don't see him having a hard time being acclimated at all. So even if he does show up in training camp, like I don't have really a worry in my mind about him. But he is, I think, if you had DJ Reader in that 49ers game, you know, he could have made a significant difference because of what he can do. And DJ's, by the way, DJ's a big man, but he had a lot of pressures last year too. We love pressures, right? Like DJ was pressuring the quarterback. So he's got a little bit of that upside too. And he's like 29 years old, but he can still get after the quarterback. So they, especially quarterbacks on the interior, they're going to be trying to run out of the pocket. They're going to be uncomfortable. They can't step up in the pocket when you have DJ Reader and Alim McNeill causing problems.
That's I think the number one thing was last year. Who did you have? Isaiah Buggs, Benito Jones. Now you just basically replace those guys with DJ Reader to where now you leave it to where who's your backup defensive tackles? A Mekhi Wingo here and there. You know,
Roderick
Martin. Like, now everyone, like, to me, that interior got upgraded because you're not working with an Isaiah Buggs and a Benito Jones as that DJ Reader spot there. Like it changes like significantly. And when now that you can actually rely on that pressure, that's where I think Aiden Hutchinson ends up turning into a yard. I'm not gonna do it today, but I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put a video out. I'm gonna do a solo video this week. I'm gonna put one out about Aiden Hutchinson because I have a take on Aiden Hutchinson I want the people to know about, and I think it stems from having DJ Reader, Alim McNeill, and hopefully potentially just a little more help on the other side and the secondary that you have now. So you're right, Jeff. This is what I've been trying to preach for a few weeks was like, let's stop looking at what we don't have and like, all right, what do we have in this room? And that other edge side. To me, that other edge side there with the commish, James Houston, Davenport, if, you know, some of these guys end up stepping up, hopefully, but that's upgraded from last year. And then that's all that matters. Like, all right, now we have these guys. We did upgrade from last year. All combined together, this defensive line has been upgraded, which is all we could have asked for. And yeah, maybe we wanted a little bit more, but it has been upgraded completely. Like, we've taken a step forward with this defensive line. So I do think you're going to see a lot more production. That sack total, Jeff, what was the goal? 50 plus?
About 10 more sacks than they had last year.
And what do we have last year? 41?
About 40-ish. If you can get to 50, I'm not saying that's everything, but damn, it would help. You'd be
We
up
should do
there.
a countdown. We should do a countdown next year. We should have like our own like little countdown.
Like a sack total every week.
Yeah.
Add them up. Okay.
Goal, get to 50.
Get to 5-0. I think, again, it's not everything. You got to have consistent. You can get sacks in bunches, and then when the biggest games, when you play in your biggest game of the year, you don't show up. Like that's not ideal. But basically, it's not just the number. It's what you're seeing. Consistent pressure. And guys like Aiden Hutchinson, who we bring up last year, just needing help, someone on the other side to help kind of help him out a little bit. He's pushing quarterbacks out. Someone who just needs to get the quarterback down. And now having Alim McNeill and DJ and Aiden kind of slowly, he's getting better as well. He's getting older, learning more things. And I think Terrell Williams, his influence is going to be very important because the Lions are an organization, and not every organization is like this, but they just seem to get everything out of a player. Like it, and it's typically, if a player does not succeed here, typically it's because of that said player. Because the Lions find a way to look at a player, look at their strengths, and capitalize on that, and really play players and get players to they just develop guys. They get them the best situation possible. So, if guys they sign or guys they bring in, guys they draft don't succeed, then typically it is on that player. I know it sounds a little ridiculous, like, oh, well, you're covering the Lions. This sounds a little biased. No, I mean, that's kind of how it's been, to be honest with you. Guys that have not succeeded, typically you're looking at that player like, what are you doing wrong? And now you have Terrell Williams. Like, this defensive line, just on paper, yeah, it's better. But in terms of coaching, John Scott, Terrell Williams, I mean, what are we doing here? It's not even close.
The Terrell Williams thing is very underrated, guys. I think. Like, we're already hearing, I know it's OTAs and minicamp, but you're already hearing like a Levi O taking a step forward to Josh Pascal. Those are guys who the last 2 years, I know there was injuries, but the last 2 years, they could not figure it out. And there was just nothing. Like, they couldn't give you anything. And there was no positive things out of camp. And now, like, instantly, you're with Terrell Williams for 2 weeks, and instantly you're starting to hear, oh, Levi's back. Like, he's starting to look really good, and no pads, but he's back. Same with Josh Pascal. Like, that's what I'm excited to see the Marcus Davenport thing with him. Mekhi Wingo starting fresh in his NFL career with the best defensive line group or coach in the NFL, Terrell Williams. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
Like, instantly, Mekhi Wingo, someone that was supposed to be a third, fourth round pick, goes in the 6th round. And instantly he's working with the best defensive line coach in the entire NFL. So, like, he's going to be able to, like, he's starting the development instantly with him. Like, these other guys had to wait and go through 2 or 3 different defensive line coaches. Instantly, Mekhi Wingo was saying, hey, I'm with Terrell Williams. Sculpt me. Make me your ideal defensive lineman. What do you see in me?
I love that. Yes. Well, maybe you could sculpt them. I don't know. Maybe have like an ice sculpture of Mekhi Wingo. Probably.
I didn't even think about it like that.
But yeah, you know what? I can get with it, Boone. Molding,
you know what I mean? Like, make me like,
whatever. Yeah.
Like, what do you envision? Like, I want to become an all-pro defensive alignment. How do I get there? And he instantly, like, Mekhi Wingo, he's raw. He's coming right out of college. He's a raw defensive lineman. It's Terrell Williams' job. Make him into an all-pro. And I think Terrell Williams has proven he can do that.
I look at his impact to what Hank Fraley is. Like, you bring in any offensive lineman like Gio Manu, he should be so excited. He gets to go to a situation not only with the players they have, the guys he can learn from, but Hank Fraley, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. So,
yeah,
it is kind of similar with Terrell Williams. It's like, okay, if you're a young defensive lineman, or even a guy like Broderick who's still younger, or even anybody really.
Did you hear Dan Campbell make the comment about his players and developing guys, like how serious he takes it? Because like now, like he's in year 4, and he just mentioned like how serious it is for him and how he looks at like bringing these players in. When you look at like the Mekhi Wingos and these younger guys, the development, because he's essentially like it's him and Brad Holmes' roster. Like, they built it from the ground up. So like, you invest into some of these guys, and you want to make sure you have the right guys in there. And if you don't, like, that's on you. That's on Dan. That's on Brad. And then like he mentioned today, like how important that is, that some of these guys that they're bringing in, like, those are their guys, and like they're going to want to do everything they can to develop them. Because if you don't develop them and their career doesn't work out, that's obviously, it could be on them, but that's partially on you because you weren't helping them out and developing. So That was an interesting comment from Dan. I love listening to his press conferences. They're unbelievable.
Yeah, he also said something today that I liked a lot, and that was kind of the self-reflection comment and what they need to do in order to get to that next level. He brought up how the 49ers, that really, and this is what I love about Dan, is the humility, self-awareness, because that's so important in all walks of life. But for Dan, he could sit up there and make excuses or say, yeah, they just were better than us that day. No, he was honest, and he's very honest to the media, and he's like, hey, they did this better than we did. And let's hear what Dan had to say about that and what he wants the Lions to be able to do come this upcoming season.
Those are the little things, like, man, where we can really grow offensively and defensively, like the awareness of who's in, what's the situation, where we know what it says on paper, but we can't do the Ron Burgundy, we can't just continue to read off the teleprompter. We got to grow. And that's the next step. That is the next evolution. Those are the little things.
The Ron Burgundy lines, well, that's a whole nother thing. But his point, and that's why I love Dan. He had the enchilada thing today. He's talking about he wants the whole enchilada. And then now the Ron Burgundy. But his point is you don't want to be the team that's okay. You have your what your responsibilities are. You're only going off of that, and I can't go away from it or else. And he thinks, okay, well, there is that, and there are everyone has a job to do, but there are going to be situations like an NFC Championship game or any big game in the NFL where you have your job on paper in your head, what you're supposed to do, but there's almost this, it's more of like, okay, I've kind of mastered or excelled at the job given to me, so I can kind of react to different things or adjust on the fly.
Spidey sense.
Yeah, it's more of a
Spidey sense.
And that comes, I think, as a team with experience and chemistry, just games played, and individually comes with just reps and being out there to be able to kind of freelance a little bit, or I guess what's the right word? Yeah, we'll go with that. But the Lions are going to get to that point. The 49ers have played in a lot of big games, so I think those guys kind of already have it. The Lions are slowly getting there. So it's a great point by Dan Campbell.
It is. And I do think like there's a sense to where Dan's going into year 4 now. And it's the same thing to where, and I know Adam put in there like kicking a field goal up 14 to make it 17. Like there's just different things. And I think even as him as a coach and like the players and you see like the organization, it's like building a program up to where every single year you're going to go through these different situations and you're going to keep learning off these different situations, whether, it's a player learning something like within a play or a different, a coverage that he's seeing or like whatever it is, it's every single game and week that you have, you're learning and getting better. And I think that's why like this team and Dan's taking them so fastly from year 1 to year 3 to the NFC Championship game is because he's been able to like take those moments. And he's such a good coach at saying like, hey, we need to learn from this and we need to use this to get better. And we need to find a way. What are they doing that we're not? And he does that so well. Like to your point too, Jeff, with that, he brought up an example today. Like if you're in the secondary and say you're going up against the Lions and your sole job is, hey, you're covering wide receiver 2. You're on Jamo, wide receiver 2. And you realize, hey, he hasn't really produced that much, but you have Sam Laporta there coming over top, and Sam Laporta puts he dominates and he's one of the best in the league. This was the example that he gave, and he was like, you're going to cheat a little bit over towards Sam Laporta, and even though your job is over here, and this is what's on paper, and this is what the scheme is, and this is what AG has you doing. You have an all-pro tight end over there that you need to help out your teammate. And like, that's just like a sense of the game that he says some of these guys are starting to get and that they need to have that the 49ers in that game, they have, because they have vets and guys have done it. But that's just something like playing and kind of getting football under your belt at this level, because like, let's call it what it is. The Lions team, it was a young football team the last 2 years. Right. It just was like they brought in a lot of rookies, a lot of second year, third year guys, and now they're starting to become like all these guys are starting to turn into vets in front of our eyes, and they're vets that have been winning and they've been a part of winning games, which we're not used to here in Detroit. Is having veterans that have gone through winning football, and have been able to use that to kind of get better.
Yeah, and that's the thing I took away from it is, and I compare it to quarterbacks that. They've been in the league for a while and they can kind of afford to do things off script. It's more just, it's like you're kind of just read and reacting out there. And I think the secondary, you had a lot of young guys in there, But just as a defense, the more these guys gel and play games together, be in different situations, they learn how to handle different situations, high pressure situations.
Yep.
You'll get to that point where guys are just kind of reading and reacting because, even Iffy's going into his fourth year, and he hasn't played he played a lot last year towards the end and played really well, but he's still a young player too. I mean, all these guys mostly are. They brought in a couple vets, but
a lot of these guys too, like that playoff run, that's like their first time ever being in those positions in the playoffs. So like you talk about that 49ers game that Dan's talking about, that's the first time all of these guys are in there. So you go around that for a round 2, and now in that mindset, like these guys talk about it all the time. Jack Campbell the other day, like he's like, I watched this, and this is something I think about every night going to bed, is that 49ers game. Like that, like I could have done better in that game. So these guys are thinking about getting better. That's the beauty about it is there are a lot of football teams out there, Jeff, that aren't as having it I'm trying to think of the word, I don't even know, just to have a guy like Dan Campbell in that room to set that culture, because every single player on this team, there are rookies who are on bad football teams, and they'll get into year 3 and year 4 and still be where some of these Lions rookies are year 1, trying to figure things out in the NFL because they don't have someone like Dan Campbell and these vets. So there are things like that here that makes a big difference building a program. And when you start getting that momentum and building it, and they start locking in on that, it's like this defense, it's going to start taking a jump, and it's going to take a jump quick too.
Dan also spoke about DPJ because John Macaroon asked him a question about DPJ, where he stands, and just kind of his thoughts on DPJ so far. They brought him back, and obviously they like him. But let's hear Dan Campbell, and you hear the Doc in there, the legend.
Shout out to Doc.
Let's check it out.
With Jamison emerging and Khalif Raymond being so proficient, what are your realistic expectations for Donovan Peoples-Jones?
Yeah, I think he's another guy that's coming in here to help us compete, and there again, it's hard to say. This thing will shake out when we get to camp. There's a reason why we signed him back. We like DPJ. He's a different body type. He's a pretty smart guy. He brings something a little bit different to the table. He's got to play big boy ball. His separation is his size and his length, and he's got to battle some. So we'll see how this goes in training camp. If we didn't like him, he wouldn't be here.
With Jamison emerging.
There you go. Obviously, that is a bunch of coach talk, but I don't hate it. He's just like, hey, you got to compete. There's a reason why we brought him back. Obviously, they like him a lot. And the thing he did bring up about DPJ is kind of how he plays, which, again, he's more of a physical wide receiver. He can run with the best of them, but he is more physical. And Dan Campbell, I think, understands what they have in DPJ. But at the end of the day, the guy's got to go out there and win the job. He's got to earn reps. Sure. So, yeah, nothing Dan said there is too surprising to me.
All right, I text Doc this after because I was interested. Does it concern you guys at all that he didn't like you're hearing him when he gets questions asked about certain player? This might just be me that's looking too deep into it. Well, I mean, I guess that's part of our job is to analyze it. But him getting asked a question about DPJ, typically you get asked a question if a guy's having a good mini camp, and it's, hey, he's been really good. Like you hear the Alim, the Levi, oh no, he's been great. We love the kind of what he's looking like this spring, the Jamo stuff. And there's with DPJ, there was nothing where it's oh no, yeah, no, he's looking really good. It was more so just, no, we have him here for a reason. I don't know. Is that just me overthinking this?
If DPJ was the wide receiver 2, then yeah, I would be okay, a little bit concerned. But I think the biggest point from what Doc said yesterday is the fact that his reps are coming with Hendon Hooker, and DPJ just, in my opinion, he's a guy that I think could go on any team in the league and he'd have the same role and he'd be able to do it. I just think he's been around long enough. He's got all the attributes, not to mention he's a hell of a blocker. And I think the Lions do value that. And you're not going to be raving about somebody's blocking when you talk about at OTAs. And I just think, to Jeff's point, when it's training camp, preseason, that's when we can really judge Donovan Peoples-Jones. But I really am not worried about it. If Khalif Raymond starting over Donovan Peoples-Jones, I'm not mad at it. That's fine. Whoever wins that battle. But I think as a wide receiver 4, when week 1 hits, I'm not really going to be worried about Donovan Peoples-Jones. I'd be confident in him, to be honest.
It's not that I'm worried about him. I don't want that to be out there. Like, I trust Donovan Peoples-Jones. For me, it's more so just like I want him to succeed. I want him to be great. I want him to go out there and get 500-600 yards for the Lions this year. Because if he does that, and your wide receiver 3 or 4 is doing that, like with Khalif, that just makes this offense that much more scary. So that, like, I'm not really like I don't know the words I'm looking for when it comes to that, but it's more like I just want him to do that because it'll help this Lions offense. It's not me being like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world.
Yeah, no,
hey, like if he goes out there and competes and he's making plays, like we're hearing Antoine Green's name, we're hearing Doris Fountain's name. Like we're hearing these names, and it's like we didn't hear anything about DPJ. Well, I don't like even if he's a blocking or he's just a big body guy, like a player or two in a 3-day span, you would think like give us something. And then when your head coach gets asked about him, you would think that he would just like he's been making the comments all week long. And we know this. He's been making comments about guys like, hey, no, he's been making plays. He's been doing this. He's done this. He's done that. DPJ, there was nothing from that. So I don't know. I don't know if there was something to do with it or if it's just like Doc said yesterday, just wait till training camp to kind of put that into perspective a little bit. So maybe it's just something that, hey, I'll wait till training camp and trust that he shows up big time.
Well, I will say this. I did not have Dan Campbell praising Levi Onwuzurike, but not really praising Donovan Peoples-Jones on my bingo card because that is something I did not expect. I'm not gonna overreact to it right now, but to your point, Boone, I do think Dan Campbell's a very honest coach. Like if Donovan Peoples-Jones was out there making plays, he would have just said that. He would have been like Donovan Peoples-Jones is, because he's not going to throw him under the bus, so he's going to say, that there's a reason why we brought him back. Like we like him, which I believe. I think they do like him, but I do think there's some things where it's like, okay, maybe Donovan Peoples-Jones isn't coming along as quick as maybe they thought, or he just hasn't really impressed anybody yet. Maybe he's just been solid, but not to the point where he's going out there because Fountain, the expectations on him aren't really much. So I think he goes to the podium and he's like, yeah, Fountain's, he's impressing, but Donovan Peoples-Jones, you kind of know what he is. Like, I don't. And maybe like Levi, for example, you didn't think he had anything left to give. And he comes to the podium and he's like, he's impressing. So I don't know. There's a couple ways to look at it. I'm not going to overreact right now, but I do get what you're saying. Like, why would Dan come out there and be like, oh yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones, I'm happy with what I've seen so far. He could have said, but he chose not to.
I thought it was an interesting fact.
I think there's something there for sure.
It's a good observation though, Boone.
Yeah,
thank you.
For sure.
And I feel bad because I want DPJ to be like a dude on this team. And he's a local guy. I'm a fan. He's a Michigan man. Yep. I'm a big fan of DPJ. And if he's watching this, which I do, I think I found out today that there are some people who have watched our show. I don't want him to be like, oh, this Booner guy hates me. That's not it. I want DPJ to be a dog on this team and contribute, whether it's wide receiver 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. Like, I want him to contribute because he can. Like, you need that big body wide receiver. That was Josh Reynolds. That was DJ Chark. If you take away DPJ, who is that guy? You don't have that big body wide receiver. That's who DPJ needs to be for you. So, like, I need him to do that. I want him to do it. The comments from Dan Campbell today, all week long, he's been praising different players when he gets asked. Like Matthew Betts, example. We asked the doc, hey, can you ask about Matthew Betts?
That's another one to Jeff's point.
He brings up Matthew Betts. Yeah, and guess what? Dan Campbell has positive things to say about him. But when BGA gets brought up, there's no he's not, oh, he's been killing it. It's, hey, no, we love to have him in the room. Like, hey, we brought him back for a reason.
And I think kind of to Jeff's point a little bit, I think Dan does realize that some of these guys, like if DPJ, if you're not going to be praising him and he realizes like he shouldn't be praised, I don't think there's going to be an issue, especially with his confidence. Like, I just think DPJ realizes who he is. That's why he realizes, okay, Detroit's not going to be paying me a lot of money, but I'm a solid wide receiver that can add depth here. All right, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm leaning towards what Jeff is saying, but I do see what you're saying.
Jeff and I are saying the same exact thing.
Well, as far as Matthew Betts, low expectations. But now, he can play a little bit in coverage. We did not expect that. Like, that's exciting. Levi.
Yeah, but every player he's been asked about, he's had something positive.
But notice the trend of players, to his point. Like the trend, like Matthew, Levi, Fountain. Like, these guys are like the.
And even when he's talking about like Alim, he's talking about Alim where, okay, now he's got DJ Reader. So there's going to be a lot more room for growth with him. With DPJ, He's just, and it's not a knock. I just think he's a guy that's going to get you 300 yards this year, 200 yards. But I think he's very important because if there's an injury to Jamo, it's going to be hard to have another wide receiver to stretch the field on the outside. Like Khalif Raymond can stretch the field, but he's going to be playing in the slot. DPJ is a guy, especially in the red zone, that can block. You can throw a fade to. I don't think there's many wide receivers that have his frame that are on this team that can do what he can do. It might not be elite, but it's just something that he brings to the team that if he were to leave, there's not that type of guy.
I'll tell you what, if DPJ goes out there and gets you 200 or 300 yards this year, I'm going to be very disappointed. That will be a disappointing season for DPJ.
I would be. I would
you
be
guys
honest.
had me convinced because he's had 1,000-yard season in Cleveland.
No, 800.
800. Like you guys had me convinced 3 weeks ago about this.
He's
so
wide receiver
300 yards for the hype that he was given and to brought in. When I said you need someone to replace the Josh Reynolds role, and we said, okay, Jamo can do that. Okay, now who's going to replace that back end then? And you guys are like, oh, well, DPJ had 800 in Cleveland. He could give you 500, 600, 700. No. That he better go out there and give you 400 or 500 at least.
What was the conversation we just had yesterday though about Khalif Raymond?
I think Khalif is going to have a big season.
Khalif Raymond
had 500 last year.
Exactly.
Josh Reynolds had 600 last year. So you still need production.
I think when we talk about, again, the situation that this team's going to be in, they're going to be leading a lot more games. I think the running game is going to continue to get better. So that's going to take away passing yardage opportunity as it is. But when you talk about Khalif Raymond, he got 500 yards last year, and he was hurt and still wasn't in the constant rotation. So I think Khalif's a guy that can go get 600-700 yards. If Donovan Peoples-Jones, maybe 200 yards was low. If he gives you 400 yards, even if he gives you 350, I'm happy with that because, like I said, I think DPJ is a guy that they really are going to rely on when it comes to blocking because there's not that many big wide receivers on this team that can just bully around a corner, and that is valuable. Nice. Like that's what you need in playoffs.
Klotz, I get you. Like Khalif played in all 17 games last year and had 400, 500.
Okay,
if you want him to replace like Josh Reynolds, yeah, maybe he can go up and get that 600, but you're going to need someone to replace Khalif Raymond's numbers at that point. Like that's why we're not overthinking it. We're not overthinking it. DPJ needs to go out there and get you 400 or 500. He needs to do what Khalif did for you last year. If you think Khalif's going to take that 3 spot, who's going to take Khalif's spot? That's what it comes down to. And if DPJ gives you 200 yards this year, that is an utter failment.
I would say 200 was low. If he gives you the 300-400, I'm happy with it.
Here's the thing: the argument, and I think you kind of added some yards in there, which is fine. When it 700, I never said he had 700, but what I did say is I'm comfortable with him being here. This wide receiver room, I'm comfortable with it. That when we had the discussion of adding another wide receiver, I had faith in DPJ, but not just DPJ. Let's take. You just brought it up. Josh Reynolds' yards. He had 600 yards. You said, okay. Where's it coming from? Jamo, 800, 500 more. There's most of it. Khalif Raymond's going to get his, so take him out. He's like you said, he's probably going to have like he had last year, whatever. Now we haven't even got to 100. You're asking what 100, 200 from DPJ? He can get more than that. They'll be fine. And then you have Jameer. We always talk about Jameer and like I don't think it's that like much of a conversation. Like I think Jamo's going to replace it with an increase of yards, 500 more to be exact, and that's most of Josh Reynolds' production. And then you have a little bit more for Jameer. You bring up all the time Amon-Ra St. Brown picking up a little more yards. Like,
yes, but
fine.
All right.
Like DPJ's never going to get 800 yards.
Which is fine. It's just the 200, 300. It's like, dude, he had 60 last year. If he only goes out there and gets 150 more in a full season after he played in 6 games last year, he got 60, and he goes out there and only gets you 150 more when he's increasing his role, that's a problem. That's a disappointment of a season from DPJ. That's just a fact. Like he needs to go get 400 or 500. That's his expectation to me.
I agree with you that it'd be a disappointment, but it's not something that'd be holding the team back. If that's the case, they're going to
I never said
somebody. No. I'm just going off.
You guys have
point.
to hear the conversations.
I'm not saying this is what you're
DPJ.
saying. I get what you're saying, but all I'm saying is I think we're putting like pressure where it doesn't need to be applied here. As far as like DPJ, if he doesn't go out there and ball out, like the Lions are still going to be fine. That's where it's like, okay, like I think what DPJ is. He's a solid wide receiver. He's an X-build wide receiver. Again, that brings value to a team within it. So if we're going strictly off production, all right, but I still think there's value that he brings to the field that it's not going to show up in production. The Lions are fine with that. Like, are you really going to be throwing fits if he goes out and gets 350 yards, the Lions going to win a Super Bowl? No, you won't care. You'll be like, DPJ did his role. Wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, that's fine.
Yeah, Booner's upset.
I'm not upset. It's just like we're having a conversation. So it's like we're having the conversation about his production. Yes, I'm gonna say it would be disappointing if he doesn't hit this mark. It's not putting pressure where it shouldn't be. It's, hey, this is his expectation. If he gets 200 yards less than that, like his expectation is 400 yards. If he gets 150 yards this year, you're all looking in the mirror and saying that was a disappointment. They should have brought someone else in to help out.
150.
And there's going to be times, we're still going to win football games. You're going to find different ways to do it. But guess what? You're going to have to put more pressure on Sam Laporta. You're going to have to put pressure on different guys because you were expecting DPJ to fill in a role. And if he's not doing that, and we haven't heard from him much about minicamp, that's a problem. Less than a month ago, you guys were telling me DPJ was going to be just fine to fill that role,
and I still think he is. Like it's 1 week of OTAs. Like
I know,
that's why I'm saying like this conversation is getting extreme. Like he's going to be
not
just
I just want to make sure, and Booner, I don't think what you're saying is incorrect about his expectations, but I want to make it very clear. DPJ by himself will not go in and just absorb all of Josh. Jamo and everyone else will, but DPJ, he's going to make plays this year. I'll have a couple hundred. To me, that's fine. Like it's, there's only one football. He's going to get a couple hundred yards, and I'll take it. 400's fair. I'll go with that. We can go with 400. That's fine. Minimum 400. But yeah, that's really it. I think we're probably arguing over nothing at this point. I mean, it's like DPJ. Give me a couple hundred.
I think it's a good conversation that if there was actually something potentially to where, you need him to show up this year and you haven't heard about him, hey, let's have this conversation. What's a disappointing season for DPJ? 200 yards. That's disappointing. What's your expectation for DPJ? Give me 400 yards. Replace what Khalif Raymond did for you last year. That's the expectation. I don't know where the argument came. I think that's pretty safe for me to say that,
because when you start bringing down like, okay, well, how is he going to replace this yardage? Like, I still think he can. I don't think there's anything that he couldn't. The thing I was saying, though, is we had a conversation yesterday where we really weren't talking about Khalif Raymond as much as we should. And you brought up the Josh Reynolds production. It's like, how is he going to do that? It's like, even if he doesn't, like, I don't think he's in a position where he needs to, that void will be filled. And I still think he brings value to this team regardless. That's why it's like, I'm not like disappointing wide receiver 4 or 5. I'm not stressing over it.
It's a statement I made that I think I would be disappointed if it gets that. There's no argument to it. I think. I don't know why we're even arguing at this point.
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
Honestly, I have no clue what the comeback is.
The only thing I got frustrated with, the only thing I was like pushing back.
Hey, Booner, calm down. Calm down.
The only thing I was getting frustrated with a little bit when I had to push back is the exaggerated, my take on a DPJ, a little exaggerated, which I didn't say all that.
Not exaggerated. The thousand, I apologize. But you know what I'm saying was like, I was pretty vocal about, hey, we need that back end support still. And if DPJ,
I said I'm comfortable with who they
you guys were comfortable. And my point and my statement is, if he doesn't get you that 400 to help replace the Khalif Raymond, and we're kind of, he takes a step forward, that's disappointing. That was the conversation we had weeks ago about this, and I think the statement stays true, and it'll stay true all the way up through the season.
Let's get to Pat McAfee, because he was hyping up the NFC North and the Detroit Lions a little bit. So we're going to play this clip from the Pat McAfee show, and then we're going to give our thoughts on it, because whenever Pat speaks about the Detroit Lions, it's very important that we play it and we react to it. So here's Pat McAfee. Let's hear what he had to say.
It's Lions, Packers, Vikings, Bears. That's how everybody sees it up there.
I don't know who is everybody. I don't know who has the Lions in front of the Packers at the moment. I feel like
everybody,
literally everyone.
AJ,
the Packers have a lot of momentum behind them
for sure.
The Lions don't have momentum behind them. They said the biggest draft of all time.
The Lions definitely are considered, at least like publicly.
You got to prove that you are. You got to prove, I think, that you are the one once you are the target. Once people expect you to be, people say, hey, you're the head of the class. Okay, you got to continue to be the head of the class for the next 4 or 5 years if you want to prove and show everybody, that's us. We have arrived.
I agree with that. And also, Foxy doesn't really do this, but Lions fans in general, like, I understand they went to the NFC Championship last year, but now all of a sudden Lions fans are acting like they've won 12 Super Bowls in the last 30 years. That's Buffalo football, like, too. Yeah, bingo.
To a T.
Same thing. So it's like, I understand the hype is there, but I agree. Like, I mean, last year, I guess they kind of did at the back half of the season, but you're getting everybody's best shot now.
It's good though.
Guys, we did that last year though. They were expected to win the NFC North last year. They won the NFC North. They won 2 playoff games. They go to the NFC Championship. They should have been in the Super Bowl. They probably should have won the Super Bowl. So I think we got everyone's best shot last year.
You can do that every single year with any team.
Yeah, we should have been in the Super Bowl as well. The Colts. We almost made playoffs with Gardner Minshew. No, you guys lost.
Yeah, I mean to the Niners who beat the Lions, and
the Packers are glad though. It's good. The Packers want everyone in the NFC North to get better and continue to get better so we're battle tested once we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, you're gonna have to beat the best teams anyways.
Yeah.
But Foxy, congrats to the Lions being the team.
Thank you, boys. Thank you.
Now, heavy is the head, brother.
Yeah, now we got to go. And also, we have new uniforms and new alternate uniforms that are awesome as well. So Lions are ready.
Nobody's talking about them. Everybody's talking about the Vikings.
Yeah.
Well, ours are black ones. Ours are awesome. There's like the old school, like Calvin Johnson days. Or
what do they call them?
I'm going to guess that they're called the Midnight Motor City uniforms.
Oh, that's not a bad name.
I totally just made that up.
Okay.
Dark mode.
We know the Lions PR guy's really good at stuff, so I assume he thought of a great name and had that entire situation pop off.
All right. So there's a lot to break down here. Okay. I just want to say, Foxy, you held your own. All right. You held your own. And we do appreciate how you represent the city and represent Lions fans all across the country. Now, Pat McAfee and AJ Hawk, which, by the way, AJ Hawk, we understand you played, like 8 seasons with the Packers. So there's a little bit of bias there already. So we understand that. But the thing I'm confused by is what Ty said about, Lions fans think they won all these Super Bowls. I mean, yeah, the team is good. And they're not just good. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. Lions fans have every right to be excited and every right to think that they're the shit. Because last year they went out and proved that they're the shit. Like, you don't think Lions fans know that that every team is going to play their best against the Lions? Like, yeah, that comes with the territory. Like, you don't think teams wake up on game day against the Chiefs, the 49ers, and think we got to play our best football? Like, yeah, that's what comes with it. So it was funny listening to this conversation. Like, yeah, Lions, I think, should be favorites to go win in the NFC North. Jordan Love, I think if I'm a Packers fan and you're comparing the situations, I think I'm a little more eerie of Jordan Love repeating what he did than the Lions, given Jared Goff's track record and given what this offense has been. I think defensively, there's some question marks, but Jordan Love, 1 season, he's a great quarterback, by the way. But I think it's a little more egregious for Packers fans to pump their chest out when Jordan Love showed us 1 year of tape, even though he's really good. But like Lions fans, every right to think they're favorites, boys. Every right.
Boys, what are we doing here? AJ Hawk, Todd, like, guys. The Detroit, it's not even just last season. And I'll break this down for you guys real quick. And for the Packers people and fans, we've talked to Tom Greisley, we've talked to Packers reporters. The Detroit Lions weren't just good last year. They ended the 2022 season 8-2 and went on ended the year winning 8 out of the final 10 games. And then when you're coming to the next year, they're favored to win the NFC North next year. And there's same conversations that these Packers fans are having. I'm sure AJ Hawk, Ty Schmidt, Pat McAfee, I'm sure the same people were saying the same things. Oh, they're favored, but they need to go out and prove it. They need to go out and prove it. They need to show us they can do it. Remember, this is the Detroit Lions. And guess what they did? They went out and won 12 games and dominated the NFC North, went to the NFC Championship game, and did what people said, hey, you guys need to go prove it. And now all of a sudden, because the Packers, again, Jeff, I'm with you. Jordan Love, good quarterback. Proved it last year. But guess what? Only had an 8-game stretch down the second half of the season to where he proved it. If we're talking about the Detroit Lions, if you're going to make those comments that the Detroit Lions need to prove it more, they're on top now, but they need to prove it more. The Packers need to do that first. The Bears need to do that. The Vikings need to do that. Those are the teams that have more to prove than the Detroit Lions. That's just a fact. The Detroit Lions are up front right now. And when you have Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, when you have those guys up front and you watch some of these press conferences, they're not giving it up. Nothing's going to stand in their way, and no one's going to come up from behind and come at them. That's just not going to happen. Yeah, it might be a little bit of a battle, but it will not happen. The young core that you've built up winning football games, having Dan Campbell at the helm, having Ben Johnson come back, Aaron Glenn come back, not talked about enough. Both of your coordinators are coming back. You have your quarterback back, Jahmyr Gibbs back. Everyone is coming back. And you dominated the NFC North last year. Those guys, like, break it down. Instead of just saying, oh, this is the Detroit Lions, that's still the SOL stuff that the people have in their head, Ty and AJ Hawk, because you guys are Packers fans. Think about the brand new Lions. Move on from the SOL stuff. What are we doing here?
Well, Booner, real quick.
Old news.
They can't sneak up from behind. They can't sneak up from behind because what are you doing in the front? What are you doing in the front?
You're leading from the front.
There you go.
Listen, let's get that get that out of your mind, NFC North fans. If you're a Bears fan, Vikings fans, Packers fans, AJ Hawk, get that out of your mind. This is no longer the SOL Lions. This is the brand new Lions. When they're up front, they stay up front. Dan Campbell will do everything to win these games.
Yeah,
if we can go one-on-one, AJ Hawk. Maybe not in football, but we can go one-on-one on something. Maybe a game of pool. I don't know.
Go-kart, Boone.
Go-karts, me and you. AJ Hawk, I challenge you. Me, mano y mano.
Yeah, no, Boone, that was a masterclass, Boone. That was a Booner masterclass. But I just find it ironic that we hear all this rah-rah about the Houston Texans and how they're Super Bowl contenders when they beat the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski. It's a whole different story. And they got mollywopped in the AFC divisional round. And they brought in Daniil Hunter, and they had a good draft class. They brought in all this free agency, and now they're Super Bowl contenders. But because they're in the AFC South, not the NFC North, to your point, Booner, with AJ Hawk, the Lions, I think, are probably one of the most legitimate rebuilds that we've seen in the NFL probably in the past 5-10 years. I think there's other ones that have been successful. For example, the 49ers when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch got there. But when you look at how that rebuild went, there was a lot more bumps in the road. And right when they started winning, right when they made it to the NFC Championship, right when they made it to the Super Bowl, people were talking all that shit about them, how they're constantly going to be contenders. And I understand that they've been to the Super Bowl. But if you really watch this Lions team, where their weaknesses were and how they filled them, I understand you have to go out there and prove it. So there's always going to be the critics about it. But it's just a matter of time. And I just think that's what you can say all this now. But when you're talking about week 17, week 18, the Lions are going to be number one in the NFC North. I think the Packers are going to be close and right behind them. But when you look at the Packers roster, you look at the Lions roster, I just think there's difference in levels to it, especially in the offensive line and in the backfield. When you talk about how to win games in the playoffs, that's how it's done, and playing good football and stopping the run, which the Lions were already elite at, and they just brought in DJ Reader. So I think if you want to be a naysayer with the Lions, that's fine, but I just think it's purely ignorant when you look at some of the other rosters around the NFL. People want to say the Baltimore Ravens are constantly Super Bowl contenders. What do the Baltimore Ravens always do in the playoffs? Choke. The Lions, they showed up year one, went to the NFC Championship game. The Baltimore Ravens missed multiple wild card rounds, and I understand that they've been a great franchise from the Ray Lewis and Ed Reed days, but they're not that team right now, and I understand they brought in Derrick Henry, but if you're going to throw the Baltimore Ravens up there, look at their roster and tell me how much better it is compared to the Detroit Lions, and I just don't think it's much.
No, go on.
I'm saying the conversation going around the NFL for the Detroit Lions should not be that. It should not be, can the Detroit Lions hold on? Oh, the Packers are the ones now to be chased down. The Packers, no. It should be the Detroit Lions right now should be being praised and being spotlighted as a Super Bowl contender. The fact that that's the conversation outside of the Detroit Lions being true Super Bowl contenders for the first time in 40 years, that should be the only conversation that's being had. That's where my mindset is. The Packers, yes, okay, cool. NFC North, maybe they'll compete a little bit. Cool. The Detroit Lions are Super Bowl contenders. They're fourth in the odds for the Super Bowl. That's the conversation. It's not that, oh, are the Detroit Lions really the front runners for the NFC North? Buddy, they're fourth for the Super Bowl odds. They're Super Bowl contenders. Let's get it right. Just like AJ Hawk, when you were in Green Bay, you guys were Super Bowl contenders and dominated the NFC North. The Detroit Lions are Super Bowl contenders and will continue to dominate the NFC North.
Well, that's the thing. That's the point, is this isn't the AJ Hawk Packers, and this isn't the Lions teams that he's faced. Like, we have to get out of our mind Aaron Rodgers and the Packers now against who the Lions were at that time. This is a new era for both teams. New quarterback for the Packers, and they had a great year last year. I don't want to take anything away from them, but also a new era for Lions football. So, if you're going off the same old Lions or any of those dumb acronyms, then you're wrong. And to all the points you guys made, it's just like, yeah, the Lions should be respected based on what they did last year. And I get it. It's one season in terms of reaching that type of success, but there's nothing in my mind based off what the evidence we have in front of us to suggest that they'll regress. Obviously injuries, that would be like the only thing, but bringing back your coordinators, Jared Goff, he's already proven he has a big sample size, 2 Super Bowls, NFC championship games, playoff wins, best offensive line in football. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown's the best wide receiver between the two teams. I'll take Sam Laporta in terms of a tight end. I mean, we can go position by position. And in the Lions, it's not just what they did as a team. Like, this is a stacked roster. They got dudes. Excuse me. So, yeah, I love Pat McAfee, but the whole, like, I get they were kind of trolling to some extent as well, but shout out Foxy because the Lions are here and they are not going anywhere as long as Brad Holmes is in charge.
This type of comments too. Oh, wow. First of all, it's Booner. Get the name right, broski. Preseason rankings. Wow, that means nothing. Get a clue, happy boy. You get a clue, happy boy. If you watched the Detroit Lions in the last 12 months, you would know exactly who they are and what they're about. Has nothing to do with preseason rankings. It has to do with they had one of the best football teams in the NFL last year, if not probably the second best team in the entire NFL last year, and they upgraded at almost every position group that was needed. Everyone's returning, including coordinators. This has nothing to do with preseason rankings. Turn the game on, watch the football game, look at the roster, see what's happening, look at the leadership. You know what's going on. This is one of the best football teams all around in the entire NFL right now in the National Football League. This team is going to compete this year.
Tell them to learn ball, Moon. Tell them to learn ball.
Broski Bear. Learn ball, buddy.
All right, and there we go. We get Gentry in here. Gentry.
Hold on. I've got
Gentlemen.
Right,
Booner, what'd you just call that guy?
What?
What the dude
His
in the
name's
chat?
Broski Bear in the chat. It was unbelievable.
Oh,
what a name. Booner. Wow.
Valued member in the chat. Valued member.
And then here he goes again. NFC North is stacked. No joke. Learn ball. That sounds... Listen, buddy. We all know the NFC North and what it is. Doesn't mean the Detroit Lions aren't going to still go and win a Super Bowl.
Well, here's the thing. I love this saying because both things can be true. Okay, both things can be true. NFC North, one of the best divisions in football. Lions, one of the best teams in football. Like they can both be true. So
wow.
yeah,
are you sure that could be true, Jeff? Are you sure?
Pressures. The pressure has increased for the Lions to go win the division. Yes, but. I mean, try and make an argument. Yeah, I mean, we could debate Packers or Lions, but you'd probably lose that argument. I mean, yeah, the Bears are building something slowly. It's going to take some time. The Vikings are going to take some time. But as of right now, it's a 2-team race, and I have the Lions.
Vikings aren't going anywhere. JJ McCarthy.
Nice
uniforms, though. They'll look good losing.
Uniforms are white. Yeah, those are sweet.
I do like the unis. I do like the unis. I will give him that. Justin Jefferson, he was looking fly in those. I'm not going to lie. All whites.
Hey, has there ever been a Super Bowl winner out of the best division in football in just the history of the NFL?
Oh my god! Yeah,
I think that's how it goes most of the time.
Yeah, typically. Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird.
Battle tested into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's weird. You can't win a Super Bowl if you're in the best division. That's just crazy. Wow, broski, that's crazy, dude.
Well, let's bring in our guest. We're going to talk some NBA playoffs, of course, NBA Finals, Mavericks, and it's going right now. Actually,
off to a bad start.
Yeah,
for the Mavs.
Well,
yeah, Chris Paul's going crazy.
If we know anything about this Mavs team, though, they could be down 40 and they'll come back and win in the second half. This is a second half basketball team.
Yeah, if we know anything about the Celtics, they tend to sleepwalk a little bit. So we'll see how this progresses. But it is in Boston. It's a tough place to play. But let's get to our good friend, host of From Half Court. You can check us out every single week on From Half Court, which is linked in our channel. Please welcome into the show, Mr. Sean Murphy. Sean,
Jeff, Booner, boys, it's good to see you all. Thank you for having me. Happy NBA Finals to you all and those who celebrate. It is the best 2 weeks of the sports calendar, in my very biased opinion. So they appreciate having me here. Always glad to talk hoops.
Well, Sean, obviously the finals, and thank you for joining. The finals are going on, and the Celtics are up about almost 20 points right now, 44-27. 7 minutes left in the second quarter. I mean, I guess now you already have a little bit of a cheat sheet because you get to see how it go. But what were your pre-final expectations? How do you see this playing out? Maybe some X factors for you going into this series.
Yeah, for sure. So, just like going into the series, I think, just like anybody else, I was very, questionable about, where the Celtics would be as far as with Kristaps Porzingis and his health. He truly is an X factor to like the ceiling that this team can reach. He's played like some of the best basketball of his life with this Celtics team, and he just takes them to a different level. In the first quarter, he had 11 points, 3 blocks, and 3 rebounds, and shot 4 of 5 from the field, including like a 30-plus foot 3. That was just ridiculous. And literally right as we're talking, I just saw him hit a dumb fadeaway mid-range jumper. Like the dude's an offensive super weapon. So he makes them a different level of a threat. I think where, to Booner's point, where you can't count out Dallas is specifically how good they are in the clutch. With when you have a guy like Luka Doncic, he can spark a 10-2 run at any time. That's just who he is. And you also have Kyrie Irving, who has been in this spot before, who is one of the best clutch time performers we've seen in basketball, playing his best basketball since 2017. I really, I was very much leaning Dallas with the expectation that Porzingis might come out sluggish. However, if that's how he's playing, then I don't know how anyone beats this Boston team 4 times. But I mean, that not to say that this series is over and wrapped. Like Dallas will come back proper, in the second half, and I imagine game 2 it'll be a lot closer as well. But I mean, it is the 3rd largest underdog since the NBA ABA merger in like the 70s. If that tells you where Vegas has this series. And I don't really know why, because I think this is a pretty even matchup based on how these teams have been playing leading up to this point. But I mean, if the Mavericks win, they might have like the best gauntlet they've ever win an NBA championship through, because they faced Oklahoma City, who was the number 1 team in the West. They faced the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the team who knocked out the defending champions, or the number 1 defense. Oh, and then now you're going to face the team with the best record in the league. Like, if they pull that off, like the conversations that will be had about Luka Doncic will be a different level.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Sean, I'm going to ask you a tough question here. This might be one of the toughest questions you've ever had in your time being in media.
Booner, I always expect them from you, so fire away.
All right. This is a big one. And then this answer is going to tell a lot. How far out are the Detroit Pistons from playing in this current series?
Oh.
All right. So I as much as I would love to talk about the Pistons being back in this series, I think you have to talk about them getting back to the playoffs and winning a game first.
There we go. I love the response.
Realistically speaking, it's been since 2008 since this team won a playoff game, the Allen Iverson Detroit Pistons, just to give you a sense of how long ago that was. And for the Pistons, like you have to build this thing up from the ground level. You have to start by being in the conversations for the play-in tournament, and then making it and getting deeper round by round. So not to say that it's not possible. Like if they make the right moves, if Cade Cunningham, shows what he can do with some competent players around him, you never know how the league shakes out. The Eastern Conference is weaker than the West. But having said that, to say that they're going to be a finals team within the next 5 years feels pretty unrealistic.
Great journalism there. I love it.
And Sean, I just wanted to ask you, I saw the news drop this morning. Dan Hurley, the rumors for him possibly going to coach the Lakers. I just wanted to see your thoughts on that. And is that a realistic spot for him?
Yeah. So, if this was like 10, 20 years ago, I don't know how realistic this would be, because, the Lakers are actually in a similar position in 2004 with Coach K. They offered him a lucrative deal to come and coach the Lakers, and he ultimately said no. And that's because at the time college basketball was, a powerhouse. The job that he had insane, job security, but also just like the sway that he had at the university as well. Well, now in 2024, it's a lot different of a dynamic. Dan Hurley has said over the last couple of months, including, around the Final Four, that he does have ambitions to coach in the NBA one day, and he would love to do it in the right situation. The reports are that the Lakers are looking for a coach who can help build a program and sustain something beyond when LeBron James and Anthony Davis are there. So I think he fits a lot of those check marks. And I mean, on top of that, this is a guy, if you're questioning his ability to win, he just won the last 2 national championships for college basketball. He would be the first guy since Wooden to go for 3 in a row. So the guy can coach. And, he's known as a savant in particular with his schematics on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it certainly makes a lot of sense. I think ultimately it's going to come down to how many years and what the contract's going to look like. But, if there's this much smoke, I think there's some fire. And I would imagine we hear him get named the head coach of the Lakers, sometime end of this weekend. And I imagine JJ Redick will, imagine to still keep doing the podcasting thing for now. But I think he's very much still going to be in coaching conversations going forward. I still think he's not out for the Lakers position. And that's been reported as well. He is very much still in the mix there. But I think, it's pretty clear if the Lakers had their way, Dan Hurley would be the coach.
Yeah, hell of a last couple days for Shams. Yeah, I'm not gonna
lie
to you.
Yeah, Woj just it's like the Kendrick Drake beef, but way more lame and not as much attention to it. So today was Meet the Shams by Woj. It was pretty good.
No, but we're watching this finals right now, Sean, and a team that I'm really surprised that we're not seeing in the finals is the Nuggets. So in your opinion, for them to return to the finals, what do they have to do? Because I feel like that roster is loaded, and I just don't understand how they lost the Timberwolves still.
Yeah, I think their roster from top to bottom is very sound. Like I think if they ran it back, they would still have a very good chance of getting to the finals. But I think they really missed like the likes of a Bruce Brown in these last series. Like when you're in these, later rounds, it really is the role players, who get you far and win you championships because, your star players are going to be there. That they're going to be the ones that are highlighted, but can you get other guys who can hit shots, who can create plays, who can make things happen when it matters the most, right? So Bruce Brown was a really big guy for them on both ends of the court, and Denver essentially, because of where they were financially, they tried to fill that through the draft. And not that they didn't get, decent quality players, but just weren't ready for that situation. So they had to go, a lot tighter with their rotation than they did when they won the championship. So, I think if they were able to, add a couple solid role players, who knows, they might even be able to get Bruce Brown from Toronto, seeing that, that he has an option and they could, I'd imagine that Toronto would want to work out a trade and get something for him in return. But, that's where they're at. As long as you can, keep going with that duo that you have in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, you're going to be in the conversation for a while. I think your window is honestly until Wemby becomes the guy we all fear he can be. So like a year or two.
And I'll ask you this too, Sean, because it's something that I've been talking with just people about, specifically Adam too. We've been talking about Cade Cunningham, and Adam agrees with his talent. But I'll ask you, because I looked back at former number 1 overall picks, and you see guys like Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama, and these guys are franchise-altering players. But you also have to take into consideration 2 things. One, the draft he was a part of. I would still say that Cade is the best player from that draft, given how each player landed in different circumstances. Like, for example, Scotty Barnes with the Raptors and Cade with the Pistons are 2 very different situations. I would still say he was the best pick in that draft, in my opinion. And when you look at, former number 1 overall picks, and you have like I said, the Victors, the Anthony Edwards, but then you'll have an Andrew Wiggins or you'll have a Karl Anthony Towns who, are not bad players, but they're not franchise altering. Where do you think Cade aligns with that? Do you believe he can eventually be a number 1 on a championship team? Or do you think the Pistons just got a really talented player that I think with the roster maximized can probably be a number 2, but I wouldn't be mad at that given who he is as a player. Where are you at with your confidence in Cade and what he can kind of get to? Can he get to that Anthony Edwards tier? Or do you think he'll be more of a really good number 2, maybe like a Jaylen Brown or someone like that?
Yeah, it's hard to say, like his true ceiling. I think his ceiling is that number 1 guy on a finals caliber team. If he is that number 2 guy, that's like you said, that's definitely not a bad thing either. That would still put him as like a top 10, 20 player in the league, in my opinion. But like with Cade, honestly, for one, I think, with a lot of the way that the last couple of years have gone down, just as far as his talent and capability, I think getting an actual roster around him, guys who can shoot reliably, guys who can defend, guys who can take some of that pressure off of Cade Cunningham. Like even a Malik Monk would do wonders for this Pistons roster. So, like if even they just got a couple guys like that, I think you would see, some drastic differences and some load being taken off his shoulders. And as far as the injury stuff, I think the concern, listen, I think I understand it. I think it's valid. When you look at the numbers, out of the context and compare them to the other number 1 overall picks or the other guys who have missed like a significant amount of time, I understand it's a high number, but you look at the fact that, that injury in 22-23 was really kind of a freak injury that doctors have said should not be, something that impacts him in the long run. And we saw that as the season went on. And, yes, he was dealing with some knee stuff towards the end, but I firmly believe that, if they were in a position where, there were more consequential games down the stretch, I think he probably could have played more than 62 games this next year. And listen, I do think part of it is he has to, learn, to condition and pace himself for an 82 game season, like that. I think that's totally legitimate. And he said that himself, going into like the off season is he wants to work on his conditioning and really making sure he can play an 82 game season. So, I'm not worried about his health because, when you look at the guys historically, like the red flags, the things that you really look out, it's really more so like bigs, these like chronic like knee or, like back issues are really like the kind of like the red flags I look at. Whereas with the injuries that Cade had in the context, of his journey, like I just personally don't think it's going to be an issue.
Hey, Sean, I think the big news right
also,
now.
Adam, if you actually just listen to what the I just said the last 2 minutes, I gave you the answer. But you can go ahead.
You got to listen, Adam. Got to open your ears up. Rewind if you need.
He just hears your first point and goes, "What the fuck are you saying?" And it's like, you just hear the data and the reasoning. Like I just gave you my reasoning. But anyway, keep going.
You got me with that one, Sean. I won't. The
I
biggest,
love you, Adam.
He said he has to open your ears. Yeah, we all do. We have to listen. Full points here, Adam. Sean, though, serious question now. The biggest question going on right now is the head coach with Monty Williams, and that's been reports coming out that is like it's kind of like a 50-50 thing right now, whether he's coming back as a coach or he's leaving. So where do you stand on that? Do you think he ends up staying? And say he does get let go and they move on, what are your who are your top candidates for this? Because I've heard a lot of different names thrown around, and there's a couple that I'm like, oh yeah, that could be it, but there's been really nothing where it's like I'm like, oh yep, he's going to change this thing around and really kind of move this program forward. Where are you at with that? Do you think Monty stays, or do you think he'll end up being let go?
Yeah, I think it's that's much more of a toss up than Troy Weaver. That as I told you guys a couple of weeks ago, that felt like a writing on the wall. You can't have that type of situation where the record is that historically bad. Expect to continue to be running into the same position and not have some more oversight and overhead going into next season. So that situation much more cut and dry. Whereas with the Monty situation, with the amount of years left. If they truly, believe that he's not the best head coach and they want to bring in someone else, then I definitely think that, now would still not be a bad time to make that move. I also wouldn't be surprised, though, if they at least gave it one more season because of the roster that was around him last year. Not saying, like that, like what my opinion is on that. That's just the reality of the situation. Right. So I think that, if I were to say, not to just be middle of the row, but it really does just feel 50-50 right now with Monty, just because, again, how unprecedented of a situation that this is. But as far as, guys that you look at as, potential coaching candidates, I think one name that makes a ton of sense, who's still kind of in the Lakers conversation as well, is James Borrego. He's a guy who actually, was an offensive assistant in New Orleans this last year, who was a top 5 offense of the league. He actually was the coach for the Charlotte Hornets when they were actually making the play-in tournament and putting up 40+ win rosters. And ever since he's left, they haven't gotten above like 22. So, I think he's definitely someone that would make a lot of sense. His ability to develop and work with young talent, but also, a young coach who is a great offensive mind. I think he makes a lot of sense. I know JJ Redick is certainly someone who's tossed around a lot, but, I think at least just from my standpoint, if you went from almost having your pick of the litter and getting the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers job. And then, hey, do you want to come to Detroit? I think that kind of be a heck of a transition to make. That's just me. Again, with someone like him who's in that situation, calling the finals, doing all the podcasts he's doing, I think he'd have to really be in love with the situation. And who knows? Maybe he really loves Cade, which we know he likes him. We know he's been on the pod. We know, like there's a respect there, but I think he's much more of a long shot.
And Sean, I saw an article yesterday. I'm not sure who wrote it, but it was about the Pistons possibly acquiring about Malik Monk and Nick Claxton. How do you think those two would fit in this roster? And if you did get a guy like Malik Monk, would you want him to start in front of Jaden Ivey, or would you want him to come off the bench?
Yeah, so that that actually was a report from James Edwards III. I think it was a Mailbag article on The Athletic, but essentially, yeah. So Nick Claxton and Malik Monk, I think, are two guys that make a ton of sense, especially when you look at a lot of the weaknesses and the holes at this Pistons roster that you had. I think Nick Claxton brings a lot of rim protection and someone who's a lot of presence around the rim, much more consistent at this current stage than Jalen Duren is. And Malik Monk is a guy that, was, one of the best, 6 men in basketball. He was playing really good for the Sacramento Kings, helped them get to the next level. And I think he would certainly make a lot of sense to start in Detroit. It's hard to talk about, whether or not Jaden Ivey would come off the bench, because it's still hard to know, how many of these players, will actually be here next year. It's still hard to know because we don't know how much significant shakeup there would be. I personally would like to see them try and get some competent pieces around these guys, give it at least a half a season. But in the same light, it's unrealistic to not expect some form of change or movement. So, I definitely think if you brought in those guys, it would be a much more competitive, consistent team, because those are guys that have proven to be able to play and use those skill sets night in and night out.
Yeah, Sean, kind of switching it back to the playoffs. As far as Luka goes, the Luka conversation, if he were to win this finals, where do you think that puts him as far as the players among the rest of the league? Do you think he would be the clear-cut number one player in the league?
I mean, he would certainly hold that title, as of that day for sure, because, he's 25 years old, is playing some of the best hoops of his life. He is, flat out, able to control the game. And, the things that he can do is just a different level. Like if he wins this finals, you start to hear him in the all-time conversation. Like not like, obviously not like right up at GOAT, but like he starts entering like top 50, top 30, guys like pretty quickly, especially with his given trajectory. I mean, he's just getting started. So, that's really the thing with Luka that makes him so special, is how poised he is for these moments, how good he is in the fourth quarter. So, for me, those are like the things that make me really confident. So, I mean, yeah, if he wins this, there's no telling. I mean, not just best player in the world, but we're going to be starting to have some other conversations about how good he really can be.
There we go. I like to hear that about Luka.
So, and Sean, real quick, did you see Adam's thread on Twitter about Tom Gores and how he? And I don't know where you stand. We haven't really talked about Tom Gores, but Adam was asking on what he thinks of Tom Gores' ownership tenure and why he would have any confidence in his new president of basketball operations. What's your perspective on just Tom Gores and Trajan Langdon now? Do you have any trust in what he's doing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the criticism is warranted. The record at a certain point speaks for itself. You can say and, talk about what you do in the community and things like that. And that's great. But people, at the end of the day, tune in for wins. And, I think it's perfectly legitimate, to expect and demand that, because it has been so long. And, I think one thing about Tom Gores that you can't say is that he's, unlike certain other owners in Detroit, like specifically, like the situation with the Tigers, like how much are we spending? Are we actually trying to put our best foot forward to put a competitive roster? Like Tom Gores, the one thing you can say about him is he spared no expense. He has gone out and spent a lot of money to go and get big names. Now, granted, that wasn't always the right decision. That wasn't always the best move. So I think, you look at, I think I understand why people are saying that they are skeptical. And listen, I think it's totally fair that a team is, that has this trajectory, hasn't won a playoff game since 2008, I totally understand why people would say a believe it till I see it approach, because I mean, that's just the way it is. But I mean, with Trajan Langdon, the things that make me confident are, he's been in situations where you've had to take chicken and turn it into chicken salad. He was in the Brooklyn Nets situation who made one of the worst trades in the history of the league. They traded the rights to draft Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They had to still somehow field a competitive roster because there was no incentive to tank. And that was part of the team that got Jared Allen, Harris LeVert, that was really competitive and played deep into the playoffs. And, in New Orleans, I really think the problem wasn't the overall construction of the roster, because for my money, New Orleans, again, is one of the deeper rosters in basketball. That's just a guy you talk about Zion, where that's someone where you really have the health concerns and someone who doesn't really take care of his overall conditioning. So that's a whole other conversation. But essentially, I think there's reason to believe that, he can come in and has a better understanding of how to put together a competitive roster. There's at least some pieces here. And I'm not abstaining Tom Gore's of criticism, because again, what did I just say like 5 times? The record speaks for itself. Fans are justified to feel the way they feel. But again, it's not one of those owners where he might be an owner that's too involved, but I hope that whoever, with Langdon, that he does allow him to run the team and truly allows him to make those decisions.
What about taking Claw? How many untouchables are on this roster, Sean? How many true untouchables? Let's cut the shit. Let's get right to it. How many untouchables are on the roster?
I mean, true untouchable is one, maybe two, like 2 players max. Like if we're being real, Cade Cunningham, I would say is the one definitive, player that is untradeable, just because he's that, prototypical cornerstone that you build a team around. Asar Thompson is a guy that showed a lot of upside, especially defensively, was, at moments, all NBA defensive level day one. And so there's still a lot of reason to believe in him. He's an absolute freak who's in the gym at all times. In his 8 games post All-Star break, before he had those issues with the blood clots, he was shooting 57% from the mid-range, 41% from 3. So he was showing progression in those areas before he went down to injury. And so I have reason to believe that he will be better going into next season. But, Jalen Duren, is as much upside as there is there. His inconsistency on defense is really, what has put the Pistons in difficult situations. A lot of times they're really only going to be as good as that back line defensively is. And they were really being picked apart at the rim. And with Jaden Ivey, I think, unfortunately, when you look at who's the most realistic player that they're going to be trading, I think, honestly, he's probably that player, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I do agree. I think Cade's the only one, to me, that's untouchable. And I know people would argue, well, the team's bad, no one's untouchable. No, I would disagree. In terms of players that I wouldn't trade by that metric, I would say Cade. I'd say that'd probably be the only player, because trading him would set this franchise back even more than it already is. But Sean, we appreciate you for joining the show, man. You guys can check out From Half Court. We do a podcast every single week. It's on our channel. He's a featured channel, or just look him on YouTube, From Half Court. But Sean, we'll talk to you very soon, my friend.
Appreciate you, Sean.
Appreciate you guys for having me. Always fun. Let me know. Always here to talk hoops.
There you go, Mr. Sean Murphy. And you know what, Sean? Speaking some facts about the NBA Finals. NBA Finals are on right now. Halftime, 63-42 Celtics lead. Luka caught some fire in the second, or really in the second period, second quarter. We still believe the Mavericks are still alive. They're still kicking.
For sure.
They're still kicking.
I put 5 on the money line. It was at plus, I think it was like, I don't even remember the odds, but it was like plus 1,500. It was nuts. 5 won me 80. Like,
they just went from like 35 to 21. It was like a 14, not 14-0, but like a 14. They cut it down 14, so it's 21. 14. I think there's a chance they can make a 21-point comeback in the second half. And if they end up coming back and winning this game, the series is done. Hang it up.
Yeah,
hang it up. If you're the Celtics and you have a 35 or 30-something point lead and you don't end up winning that game at home, series is over. And I hope they win it.
You can tell Kyrie's flustered though. Like he's just playing out of himself right now. Like
he'll settle down.
That's game one though. Kyrie will
I know, but I'm just saying if he like picks it back up in the second half, Plays half as good as he did.
Luka, don't let Luka get hot again. Oh man,
dude, he's got to start playing some defense too.
Yeah, that's the thing with the Celtics, man. They're team oriented, but man, they're throwing Derek White at you. They're throwing Drew Holiday at you. Those are two really, really good defensive guards. Like that's a lot for both those guys. But Kyrie, I'm not worried about him.
One of the best players in the league, Jason Tatum, 8 points, 3 for 8. Oh, what a like, everyone else on his team is going crazy besides him. That's why I don't think Jason Tatum's top 5 in the league.
He ain't top 5. He's top 10.
People argue he's like a superstar. I don't even look at him as a superstar. He is so. No,
he's the superstar. Come on.
What do you consider superstar? What do you consider
superstars like Jokic, Luka Doncic? LeBron is kind of past that because he's older. Steph Curry was a superstar. Like it's like the face in the face of the league.
Okay,
Anthony Edwards is turning into it. Jason Tatum has had his chance multiple times to do it. Has not been able to win a championship in the last 8 years of going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And now he's not even like you could say him and Jaylen Brown are right there going back and forth on who's the best on the team. Like you have to be the clear best on your team. Face of the league, like superstar. There's probably only 5 superstars in the NBA.
I can agree he needs to win, but who are you taking, Booner? Would you rather have him or Jaylen Brown?
I don't know. It depends on the game. Jaylen Brown is 5 for 7 with 13 points. Jason Tatum's 3 for 8. And this is what happens all the time is Jason Tatum he's so inconsistent. He's like the most inconsistent star that's ever stepped foot on an NBA court. And he gets praised as a superstar. And it's just, to me, it's like, you're a star. But you can't be a superstar and be that inconsistent. You cannot.
I guess
there's no excuse at this point. 8 seasons straight of going to the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever it is, and you haven't done anything and you're inconsistent. That's not a superstar to me.
I think superstars maybe a little subject. Like for me, there's tiers, and I think Jason Tatum is a lower tier superstar because I think Jaylen Brown is a star. I wouldn't put Jason Tatum in the same tier as Jaylen. I think he's better than Jaylen Brown. So to your point, Boone, he's barely there, but he's not in the class like the top.
I think they're a lot closer than what people think. A lot closer than what people think.
What? Wait. What do you mean?
Jason Tatum.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's egregious. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Like, there's a lot of players around the league I would take over Jason Tatum. Not a lot, but there are a handful.
I would say there's probably 8. Yeah, he's top 10, but yeah, there's a good 8.
So tired of hearing the superstar Jason Tatum. Like, I'm so tired of it. You see that guy behind me? That's a superstar. Quit putting your name in his name without winning anything and going 3 for 8. And I hate it.
I was surprised to hear you say Steph isn't a superstar anymore.
There's a situation. Yeah, no, like LeBron, these guys already have the superstar following, and like everyone in the world knows who they are. Yeah, and everyone already knows who they are. They're literally Steph and LeBron are top 10 players of all time. So like that's just such a different. We're starting to get into that new the new players are starting to take over. So that's why I think you're starting to see the league flip a little bit.
This is where I'm at too with Tyler and Sean. That's about where I would put those guys. 10 to 15. Jaylen Brown top 20.
I'll put Jaylen Brown 15 to 20 and Tatum 10 to 15. Like, I think they're that close. I do. You could disagree or not.
You want to do this now? We'll go through.
No, we won't. We won't. Can we have this conversation?
I think you'll get to 18.
Are we going to have this conversation about Dan Hurley and JJ Redick and the Lakers? Me and you, buddy.
So
he just wants to duke it out.
Yeah. I'll say me and Booner had a little disagreement because he believes that Dan Hurley should stay at UConn. Booner, a big college basketball guy. I mean, I love college basketball. Booner, you're passionate with this. You were very passionate today about this. You think Dan Hurley should stay, build a legacy, three-peat, which like Sean brought up, it's hasn't been done. There's only 1 or 2 guys, I believe, maybe one that's done it in the history of college basketball. I tend to be on the other side where in any profession, if you're Dan Hurley and you go back to back and you're looking at the landscape of college basketball, and UConn, like Woj brought up on Get Up, UConn isn't a school that's just bringing in a bunch of money through their football program. And I know they're bringing in a pretty good class, Boone, to your point. They're bringing in some good players. That is fair. But I think if I'm Dan Hurley, if I'm going to leave, I want a good job. And I think the Lakers job is a perfect job for him because you get guys that are already proven stars, superstars, wherever you want to put them. And I think, and to your point, you mentioned it earlier about the Lakers and the dysfunction. I do understand that. I do. I would still agree Lakers is an intriguing job, but I would also add that I think there would be a agreement there that he's going to be allowed to kind of build this thing out. So I don't think he would take it knowing, okay, I could get fired in 2 years or whatever the case may be. But worst case scenario, if he's not there for 10 years, if he's there for 5, he's still going to get one of the best jobs in college basketball immediately. So I don't think it's that much of a risk for him. I like
Jeff. That's where that end of the statement, I'll say that's not true, because you get a job at college basketball at the UConn level like that, a job has to be open. A job has to be opened up, though. You can't just go in. You're not just going to go in and take. You're not going to just go in and say, I just want the Duke job. Oh, I want the UConn job.
No.
Oh, I want North Carolina. Oh, I want Kansas. Because when you leave, someone replaces you, and typically, if someone replaces you, it's someone that's probably going to be there for a little bit. So, like, him leaving is a big decision. This isn't like a small, like, oh, I'm leaving. Like, no, you have one of the best jobs in the world when it comes to college basketball. Like, this is a prestigious job. The UConn job is. There has been 2 or 3 guys that have had it and that have been elite at it, and these are Hall of Fame coaches. The thing with Hurley is, and I want to make this very clear too, because I don't want people to think that I think Dan Hurley right now, and Jeff, I texted you this earlier today. I think right now Dan Hurley is the best basketball mind and basketball coach on the planet. Like at this moment, I think Dan Hurley, you could argue, is the best basketball coach on this planet. He is extremely high level, not at just X's and O's, building a program, recruiting players, working with players when it comes to kind of building those connections, working with coaches, everything that comes with the game. You can argue the NIL now, like, he is one of the best on the planet, especially when it comes to a basketball mind. With that, though, I do believe if he took that Lakers job, if I had to make a bet, will he be successful or not? I would bet yes, he's going to be successful, because I think Dan Hurley is that good of a coach. But the only thing is we've seen college coaches win national championships and try and make that jump to the NBA. We've seen this a lot. This is like a deja vu situation. And on top of that, now you're saying, hey, go take over this prestigious organization with the Lakers, who have gone through 7 coaches since 2012. And I know you're saying, well, yeah, they're going to set him up long term, so he knows he's not out in 2 years and he can build this up. You're not always like, there are a lot of people who are told, hey, you're going to be set up long term. You're going to have time, and when things get tough in year 3, they're gone. This happens all the time. So for me, my mindset with Dan Hurley, yes, I'm a college basketball guy, so I'm going to fight for a guy like Dan Hurley to stay in college basketball, because he's the best thing that's happened to college basketball in years. Like, he is unbelievable. I love him at UConn. But for me, my mindset, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong with this or not, I think he has a better chance of continuing at UConn, building a big legacy to be like the next Coach K. Go there, keep winning national championships, go for a 3-peat. Even if you don't get a 3-peat, he's going to win 3, 4, 5, 6. He's going to continue to build and build and build and become the next Coach K of college basketball. That's essentially the path that he is on right now. Now, would you rather do that, or would you rather take a chance when it's like the quarterback situation with the NFL draft, Jeff? When you take that chance at a quarterback, there's a small percent that it works.
Yeah,
for Dan Hurley, you take the chance in the Lakers, you have a small percent of a chance to go out there and be one of the best to ever do it and to turn that around. Now, if you win one NBA Finals, all right, cool. Maybe it's all worth it. But right now, he has a chance to turn into the Coach K of college basketball for the next 15, 20 years if he just stays and continues doing what he's doing. Like that's where, to me, it's like, you need to stay there, and you can be one of the best ever in the college basketball game at what you do. You're going to be talked about as Coach K if you continue winning at the pace you're winning. And that's where he needs to kind of realize, and that's where I'm at with it, to where you go to LA, all right, cool. What if it does work out for a little bit? Awesome. But what happens if you go there and it doesn't, and you can't go back to UConn? You just had a Hall of Fame career that you started, and you would have been one of the best ever to do it, and you ended up just leaving to go to LA to flame out in 3 years. That's where I'm at a little bit with him. I think that I'm a Dan Hurley fan, massive fan of Dan Hurley. So I hope that he ends up being really. Are you good over there?
Yeah.
No one else can see you. It's just me. Do you have a bee in your room or something?
It's a fly, dude, flying around the screen. All right, I will add this.
And he probably ends up being the Lakers coach, like Sean's saying in the chat.
Okay,
I think he ends up taking the job. It seems like it's his job. He wants to coach in the NBA. He's made it very clear the last 2 or 3 years that he's always wanted to coach in the NBA. So he probably takes the job, and they're going to throw a bag at him. Do I think he should do it? No way. Stay at UConn and go become the next Coach K. That's a dream if you're a coach.
You got to think, though, okay, and I get what you're saying. but not everyone thinks like that. Not everyone thinks I'll just stay in college basketball and be the best at this. Some people think, okay, I succeeded. I won 2 national championships. My stock is high, and I have a chance to go coach a prestigious organization. And if I have success in the NBA and potentially win an NBA championship, now your legacy as a coach, not just a college basketball coach, a coach significantly rises. Like now you're entering a stratosphere in which not a lot of coaches
I agree with that.
have been able to accomplish. So that's where he's coming from mentally. Like I want a new challenge. Like, especially when you're great at what you do, like, yeah, you want new, and not everyone's just content with being like, okay, I just want to be the best at college basketball. So I don't think you're crazy for thinking that way, Booner. I just think the way he approaches it, maybe the Lakers isn't a great job. I think, hey, the Lakers as an organization, little dysfunctional. I will agree. But in terms of Dan Hurley taking that next step, like I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I don't.
Yeah, I know. I will agree with you on that. I think
we do agree that he's going to be
in the middle on that.
Yeah,
I think we came to the middle on that too. Like if you do go to the Lakers and you win multiple championships and you build a program like you did,
that's like Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, well, he's already going to be in the Hall of Fame, but
for NBA and for everything, not just college basketball.
So if you go ahead and do that, then yeah, for sure, I'm with you on that. But again, for me, it's just more so. One, obviously, I'm a college basketball guy, but number 2, it's just you've already built up something and you can continue to have success and something that you already know you're successful at, and taking that jump. And I guess like if that's something that he wants to do and challenge himself, more respect to him. I just hope that, and I believe he will get it done in LA. I'm just more nervous seeing that there's been 7 coaches there the last 12 years. That's where I'm like, Dan. That's where it's like it hurt. That's why it hurt me so much today when that got reported. And I texted you and we got in the argument. It's just like, dude, I love Dan Hurley and he's great for the game in college. And just seeing that's a potential to get taken away because, and then to a Lakers job that has not been very stable. It's very, and you already know how I feel about this Lakers job. I've had a personal connection with that this last year too. So now Dan Hurley, my favorite coach in the college basketball right now that's getting taken away from me, Jeff. Like, the Lakers team's starting to really. I was a Lakers fan for a while. Like, I like the Lakers, and now they're about to do me bad back-to-back years, and that's a problem. They're starting to get personal.
That's fair. You
understand it was personal for me.
I do.
Last year.
We got some super chats. And we have some questions we're going to get to. So we'll start. Vision Stealth mentioned earlier. Jamo burning Carlton Davis. He says, "Hey, I see a CB in that clip." Vision Stealth. We appreciate the $2. Thank you. Ed O'Neill. Thank you for the $2. His Green Bay hangs with San Francisco. They D-ride. We do it. SOL. Yeah, you're all right, Ed. Ed also donated another $2. He says, no one expecting us to hang with San Francisco. We were up 17. Yeah, all right.
Thanks,
again.
Ed.
Bon J, Mailbag, MCDC, and others have raved about the new D-line coach, but no one has talked about what kind of impact he'll have being the run game coordinator. What kind of impact do you think he'll make?
I mean, he's definitely going to be able to read through the opposing team's defensive line very well. I mean, he's seen a lot of looks over his years, and he knows what he's doing when it comes to coaching it. So I think it could bring a different dynamic as far as how they approach it. Maybe they do more power runs at his own runs. I don't know, but I think there will be. I mean, they said it, Jameer and David, and more so to do with Ben Johnson, but they want to run fast this year, and I'm sure Terrell Williams is all for that.
Let's see here for the next question. Anakin says, Mailbag, who's your guys' favorite Detroit player? Any sport has to be on a Detroit team. I would say Megatron. That's my favorite player. And Detroit.
Are we talking right now?
Yeah. Are we talking
right now?
Currently or all time? Because I have a different one all time.
Yeah, all time for me would be Kelvin. Right now, that's a tough one.
All time, it's probably Pavel Datsyuk or Matthew Stafford.
All time for me, I'm gonna go Rip Hamilton, first Detroit sports guy that I.
Oh, and Chauncey.
Yeah, Rip was my guy. First jersey I ever got was Rip Hamilton jersey, and then for Lions, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go Corey Schlesinger, first Lions player I ever met when I was like 6 years old at a Lions camp. Great dude. Also, same camp with Corey Schlesinger. Got some kicking tips from Jason Hanson as well. So I do have a little bit of Jason Hanson blood in me. If you guys need me to kick some field goals,
if we're doing both, honestly, Chauncey would be 2. Chauncey, I got a Chauncey jersey in my closet, so he's the first real influence on me basketball wise. So I'll go Chauncey and Kelvin.
And by the way, too, Klotz, and I just want to. I think Terrell Williams run game coordinator on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if that got mixed up. I think.
Wait, run.
No, I think he. I think
run
he
game
like
coordinator.
It's the defense. Terrell's on the defensive side of the ball, run game coordinator. Like, and in the same what's his name? Let me pull it up real quick.
Is he?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify because I saw a comment here. Passing game coordinator on the defensive side is Deshae Townsend too. He's the DB's coach. Gotcha. But I think that's more so, and I you know what I mean. I think it's more so like the run game coordinator on the defensive side. I just cleared that up because I think in the comments.
Fair. If you were to answer Anakin's question, and it was one player today, who is it? One player, any of the 4 teams.
Wait, sorry, what was the question?
Who's your favorite Detroit player, any of the 4 teams currently?
Tough question.
Oh, Jeff. Killian doesn't play for the Pistons anymore.
I'm gonna be honest. My favorite probably right now. Gonna have to say Cade Cunningham. I think Cade Cunningham. God. I think Cade or
you can't have a player on the Pistons be your favorite. They haven't won a thing.
Wow,
the Lions have won the same amount of games as the Pistons this last year.
It's either him or Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell or him. Those are my two. Honestly, you know who's up there too? Wait, I didn't want to name because it's not fun. Ben Johnson. He's not a player, but he's like one of my favorites in Detroit, to be honest with you. I am. I'm a Ben Johnson fanboy.
Who do you got, Boone?
I'm gonna probably go Amon-Ra St. Brown, just because we've got that connection. You know, did post me on his Instagram, so I'm gonna have to go Amon-Ra St. Brown. Go check it out.
Yeah, I'll probably go Jameer. Laporta's right up there just because that was my shot called, but I think Jameer's he's my favorite player to actually watch play football in Detroit right now.
The Glaze. No, I'm just kidding.
Jeff, take a guess. Take a guess, Jeff.
Oh yeah, Mo. Apple cider.
It's Mo cider, without a doubt.
Apple cider.
Had the honor with Terry Foster to give him Detroit Sports Player of the Year 2 years ago.
Did you give him a big hug?
No, I didn't. But he's a very nice gentleman. He always
just had BMG.
Yep. So
just a little hat.
Mo cider for sure.
It's fair.
By the way, too, I actually never mind. I'm not. I'll tell you guys off air. I'm not going to bring this. I'm not going to tell the story. I can't tell the story on air. It's about a Detroit Lions not Lions athlete, but a Detroit athlete that I was back in the day. We'll talk about it off air. I can't. Yeah, I went to go say, and I'm like, I don't know if this is a story.
History.
Yeah,
Ed
and it's a big time
Mailbag.
player too. I'm just going to throw that out there.
The Lions are in the Super Bowl. They are the exact same situation as the 2014 Seahawks were in. What is the play call?
Give it to Monty.
The team loves to put the ball in Goff's hands. They're running the ball, dude.
You better give that shit to
I've got
Monty.
something here. Are you ready? Did I mute myself?
They're running the ball.
You put Alim McNeill at fullback. You put David Montgomery back there. And you just run it right behind Penei Sewell and Alim McNeill. And you go score a touchdown to win the Super Bowl.
Honestly, you put Skip.
Put Skip at tight end. Put him at tight end. Put him in motion. Now you have Penei, Skipper, and Alim McNeill, and you've got Demont just following behind.
That's paving the road.
That's unstoppable. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're running the ball. I don't think you guys would disagree. They run the ball, right? I mean,
put Baki in there. A little pitch to the outside. Never know.
No, come on. For the Super Bowl.
Eric Allen, how about Brazil telling the NFL that they don't want the Packers and Eagles to wear green due to gangs down there and how dangerous it'll be?
I did see that.
Yeah,
I don't know if I like that. You
should have sent 2 different teams then.
I don't know if we should send anybody. I don't know. Sorry, Brazil. That's why you got to watch.
It's crazy, dude.
I know the National Football League. It's starting to become. They're trying to expand the brand, but we have to watch when we're used to the United States of America, the confines of the U.S., and we start trotting into Brazil, like, let's play some ball. Like, not everybody runs. It's not the same in Brazil.
Yeah.
It's very different. And there's, you better have those players protected, like bulletproof.
They should just cancel it and then just play it.
I mean,
somewhere.
do you know what kind of, is it worth the risk if a player were to get hurt overseas? I mean, in Brazil, like a die potentially, like that would be, oh my God. I just don't think it's worth it. And I'm sorry, anyone that's from Brazil that maybe tunes in, I appreciate your presence. But man, I just don't think that's smart, to be honest. Maybe it's
the fact you can't wear green and the two teams they picked are the Packers and the Eagles. Like, they have to wear green on the field. What are they both going to wear? All white, and they still have green on it? Like, it makes zero sense. Zero sense.
Yeah, and it's just like, to your point, Jeff, like they go travel to Germany. All right, that's different. But when you're in like a country like Brazil, like, yeah, there's a president probably, but that country is just ran by the cartel. There's like, so for the NFL trying to do business, like that's not a country that you want to try to do business in. There's no chance.
Where's that? Where is it at when soccer players, you mentioned, they don't score or something, like die or get shot? Where's that at?
It wasn't Brazil. It was fucking.
Jesus.
Maybe
what?
Colombia. It might have been Brazil. I don't know. It was one of those countries.
Spain, maybe. I don't know.
I don't want guys over there. I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's safe.
By the way,
I hate that.
Mavs cut it down to 14 right now. This has become a ball game.
I'll be so happy if that hits.
This has become a game. And I want to throw this out there. First of all, Broski, me and Broski were going at it earlier. All love, all part of the show. He said I had to guard Kobe. He played versus Kobe twice in high school.
That's wild.
That's nuts.
Wild.
That's nuts. I love that. Shout out, Broski.
Check yourself, Boone.
No, I did not. And listen, I did not challenge Broski to a one-on-one. We were just talking ball. No one-on-one. I'm not playing Broski one-on-one. If he said he played against Kobe, he had to be decent. I'm good. I'll pass on that one.
It's fair.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get out of here. We appreciate you guys. Great Thursday show. Tomorrow's Friday, end of the week. It'll be another great show.
Lock in.
We appreciate your guys' presence. Get your merch, officialcgsports.com.
Booner.
And don't forget, tell a friend. Just to subscribe. Because we're trying to chase 10,000. And we're going to get there, fellas. Until tomorrow.
Love you guys.
Care. Stay blessed. Deuces.